Okay. All of us did. I'm fine. I've talked to some people that are over 30. All right? Yeah. Ready?
Did you go get chicken Saturday, buddy?
I'm sorry?
Did you go get you some chicken Saturday?
I did.
You didn't?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did.
It was good too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was out of town.
All right.
Okay. Everybody's ready. Oh boy. Get more and more. Are we talking? Yep. Good evening. I would like to welcome all of you to the Planning Commission meeting this evening for the town of Smithfield. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? All right, thank you. Okay, to get down to business. First item on our agenda tonight is Community Development and Planning Director's report. Please, Director Clary, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. We do not have any updates at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda tonight is upcoming meetings and activities. May 16th, both the Board of Historic and Architectural Review meeting, Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Well, Zoning Appeals meeting has been canceled. But the Architectural Review meeting, that's held May 16th, 6:30 p.m. Monday, you have Town Council Committee meetings. Monday, May 22nd, 3 p.m. And Tuesday, June 6th, you will have the next Town Council meeting. And if necessary, to Tuesday, June 13th, 6:30 p.m., here at the center, we'll still have another Planning Commission meeting. Okay. Item number 3 is public comments. Okay. The public is invited to offer comments with respect to this application.
Mr. Chairman,
That's, after I read the first statement. I understand.
these are regular public comments.
Yes. Back to the agenda. What did I do there? Disappeared on me. The public is invited to speak to the Planning Commission on any matters except scheduled public hearings. There was a sign-up sheet. I have 2 people signed up. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Any required responses from the town will be provided in writing following the meeting. For public comments, we have Mr. Jeff Brooks.
I'll state my name and my address.
Councilman Brooks, thank you.
Hey, Jeff Brooks, 320 Gray Street, and I'm here as a citizen, not as a part of town council. And I just want to say a few things. I know that this is going to be a long meeting, and I'm going to try to keep my comments quick. So, being in the oldest residence on Gray Street, I'm pretty committed to the historic district. We have Pierceville ahead of us, and we all know that, and that's why you see so many people here. I'm sure they're signed up, which is why it's going to be a lengthy meeting. But I'm glad that they're here. So at Town Council last night, I made a statement, which I seem to think that it was well received, about encouraging and asking people to be civil and to think about their thoughts and to have a plan rather than have a knee-jerk reaction. And there's no secret that I'm a part of the historic district, and those are, I guess we'll call them my people, because I'm a part of that community. And I'm not stating that that they're the only ones that are just showing up and complaining, because all the usual suspects are still here. They're still going to show up. But I encourage you guys to listen to them. They're not idiots. They are very intelligent, and it's worth listening to. We have a very long process ahead of us. We're all in the same boat. This is our town. This is where we are. It's our community. It's our town. Dr. Pope and all of this commission has done a wonderful and extremely extensive job in learning and knowing about impacts of whatever development it is. And you can take the one guy's name out of it. It's just a development. So let's get that out of here. But you're here to be tasked to listen and learn, and I hope that you give us that opportunity. I want to thank you to Mayor Steve Bowman, who is watching online, probably from his sofa somewhere, and say that Mayor, I did my due diligence today. I actually went down to the Hamtown Mercantile, and I got popcorn, which my beautiful wife over here has. So I've got some popcorn, so I'm going to sit back, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to watch how the show progresses, and I wish you guys luck. So my motto is suit up, show up, and speak up. And thank you to all that does this public service, because it's a thankless job. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Brooks. Second on our public comments list tonight is Mr. Pat Soul.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. State your name and address for the record,
Pat
please.
Stoll, 104 Richmond Avenue, Church Square subdivision. Is that Mr. Chapman?
Me?
Yeah?
I hope not.
Oh,
Brian, Charles Brian.
Okay, sorry. I have my vision detailing and stuff in the evening and stuff. Anyway, board members, chairman, and especially all my fellow citizens, I'm glad you're here tonight. I wanted to tell you something first. I had progress, I mentioned last night about my church not being ADA accessible. I was able to talk to a vendor out in Virginia Beach. They're going to come down and they're going to be able to install the doors for us. And when I talked to the gentleman, he said, yeah, he said, we got good prices, and for churches, we have even better prices. So it's going to be a win-win. But the main reason I'm bringing it up tonight is talking about the new Grange building down here, and this is especially to our Board of Historic and Architectural Reviews. I kind of like the idea of having this Grange building down on Main Street. However, I don't care what Mr. Luder and his architects do, but I would like it to be conform to something like a 1750 type of style of homes that we have now in the historical area, so they can make the facade look like what was just built in the 1750s. We don't need something from the 1920s that would not look like historic Smithfield. I think if they do something like that, it would meet just like all the other great towns in the Commonwealth, Williamsburg, everything else, to do the same type of thing. And it would actually end up being, if they decided to do this, it would actually be able to draw more tourists in. They said, geez, look at this place. It looks fantastic. Looks like it was here since 1750. It's just amazing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. So. We have quite a bit to do tonight, and I do want to acknowledge a couple of the town officials here. Councilman Brooks. Yes, sir. Welcome, you're here. Councilwoman Valerie Butler, you're here, thank you. And Deputy Chief Myers, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Thank you.
And the mayor's on video.
Okay, item number 4 on our agenda tonight is the Planning Commission comments. Planning Commission want to jump into this? Too early? Come on, come on. Let's be active. You want to reserve your energy? Okay. Okay. No Planning Commission comments? I would just like to repeat a little bit of what Councilman Brooks said. We are a friendly, small town, and we work together. The Planning Commission serves at the pleasure of the Town Council, and I believe everyone up here on this commission loves this town and want to do the best for it. I thought about not saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Smithfield Times. They wanted to turn the DMV into some divisive issue. After we didn't approve the first draft of that, they placed a survey in the paper, should the Town Council overrule the Planning Commission. I thought it was sensational, sensationalism. I hope we do not buy into that type of mentality. It's a small town, friendly town, and I think we all want to maintain that characteristic. With that, no other Planning Commissioners' comments? Planning Commission comments. That item is closed. Item number 5 on our agenda tonight, Site Plan and Entrance Corridor Overlay Review Application Extension. This is 888 and 900 West Main Street. Luda Sports, Amy Novak, applicant. Could we have the report, please?
Yes, thank you, sir. At its Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 meeting, the Planning Commission conditionally approved the applicant's site plan amendment and entrance corridor overlay design review applications for 2 years. This is while the applicant endeavored to replace the sheds with a new facility constructed of a style and materials identical to the existing concession stands. The applicant has installed 2 8-foot by 12-foot sheds, approximately 96 square feet, and 1 14-foot by 28-foot shed, 392 square feet. The applicant is seeking an extension for this conditional approval as they are currently in site design review for the new maintenance facility building. Once the maintenance facility building is complete, these 3 sheds will be removed. Town staff do support the request for an extension as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
The applicant is not.
No? Okay. Planning Commission comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just want to add it. I spoke with Ms. Novak about that this week because really, Amy, we need another 2 years or 3 years to get this done. And she sent me a response this evening from Kimley Horn, the design engineer on this. And the thought is that Kimley Horn finishes design this summer. They build it in the fall. They bid it in the fall and build it in 2024. So they're looking probably another 18 months to completion on this project. If you also notice in your reports here, we have some renderings of the buildings. And I commented to Mrs. Novak that these renderings are exactly what we're looking for. when we asked for stuff to put in our historic overlay district. We had a lot of discussion on that this year, and we expect the town and the county and the state and the feds, if they're going to build, to live up to the standards that our private citizens have. And I believe this building does that very well. I know this building has been funded. It is being funded with ARPA grants, so there is money for this building. So it's not like it's not going to get built. And Ms. Novak also said it's going to be very good for their facility and certainly beat out a couple of sheds. With that in mind, it is my opinion that we move forward with this. I would like to make a motion that we extend this conditional use until this building is completed.
Second.
We have a first and a second to accept this motion, this application as presented. Is there any further comments?
So are we approving this building tonight, or are we approving the conditional use permit to continue to use the sheds for additional 2 years?
Conditional use permit. We'll get the building at another time.
No further comments? Call for the vote.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Dr. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Swecker?
Yes.
Mr. Yoko?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hillegas? Yes. And Chairman Bryan.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passed. Item number 6 on our agenda tonight. Do we have sign up for this? It is a public hearing. Special use permit for the application 921 South Church Street, Lawrence, Nagar, care of Patsy Watson, the applicant. No one signed up for that.
Oh, staff report. Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
The public hearing portion of that is closed. Could we have the staff report? Yes. Yes. The staff report, please, Director.
Yes, thank you, sir. The applicant is seeking approval for a special use permit pursuant to the Smithfield zoning ordinance, Article 3I, Section C31, C31, in order to allow an event facility as a principal use of the property. The suit in question is currently vacant. The applicant is seeking approval to open an event facility, which would be the principal use of this portion of the building. They intend to employ 2 personnel, security if needed, and outsourcing a caterer. The business will operate from 11 a.m. until 12 a.m. Tuesday through Saturday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday, or by appointment only. The customers and employees will use the on-site parking located throughout the property. There are approximately 15 to 20 spaces allocated for this business on the property. The applicant intends to host a variety of events, including but not limited to birthday parties, receptions, retreats, and business luncheons. The applicant does not have any plans to change the exterior appearance or color of the building. They may install a sign to promote the proposed business, which will require the submission of a sign permit application fee, and renderings of the proposed signage, along with its dimensions. If applicable, the applicant may need to appear before the Planning Commission for entrance corridor overlay review of the proposed signage. The positives of this application is the applicant is not proposing any exterior structural changes to the property and is proposing to provide an additional event facility space in town. The negatives, it does require a special use permit as a principal use of an event facility. Town staff do support a favorable recommendation to Town Council for this application, provided any proposed signage or exterior changes must be properly permitted and reviewed by the Planning Commission if applicable. They must also obtain a new certificate of occupancy from Isle of Wight County if required. Since the original drafting of this staff report, the operating hours were clarified to that closing time of midnight. Chief Howell has expressed concerns over events mentioned that would need security and the ability to utilize the additional parking areas located off-site and nearby this building. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Yes, ma'am. Would you like to add anything to your application? Yes, if you would. Yes. Your name and address for the record, please.
Patsy Watson, 821
Edinburgh Court, Smithfield, Virginia 23430. Patsy's will be an upscale event planner. I will be hosting church functions, birthday parties, very small, I may say, very small, maybe 15 to 20 people, AKAs, deltas, meetings, things like that. So I believe that we are in need of spaces like that, birthday parties. I did have an event in Hampton, Virginia, and it's just too far to drive for, small birthday parties, church events, women retreat, and sometimes on Saturdays when women want to get together and spiritually talk. So it's just going to be a upscale. And also, when I do events per se, the age will be 40 and up.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Watson.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions of the applicant, if I may.
Yes. Mel?
Ms. Watson, I have just a couple of questions for you. How many is the maximum capacity at your event center?
I believe, I have the owner here. He told me 50, I believe.
50?
Yes. Mm.
Okay. And with concern, with respect to the chief's concerns, what will make a determination of whether security is required or not?
If there is a wedding party, per se, or if there is a party, elegant party, nothing crazy, but I always have security. Closing, I put 12 o'clock because I would have to clean up, or the staff would have to clean, but it would really end at 11:30,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay, so maximum capacity is 50 attendees, and then you have security at weddings and any event
If
in the
there's
evening?
any music, yes.
If there's music?
Mhm,
Okay,
yes, yes.
thank you. And then, Ms. Clary, my question to you then would be, if we have a 50-person event venue, what are our parking requirements for that?
That would be a private agreement that the applicant would have to enter into with neighboring parcels.
Okay, so the event venue as is does not have enough parking for 50 attendees, is that? I mean, do we have a parking requirement? I mean, it doesn't really matter if there's a parking requirement, does she meet it? That's really what I'm trying to understand. Yes, ma'am.
I have the owner here, and he also owns Weiss Tires, and they close. So when my events will be going on, they will be gone. Am I right? Yeah. So the parking actually goes all the way back.
All right, so your application says we have 15 to 20 spaces.
Yes.
And my question is, does that 15 to 20 spaces meet the parking requirement for an event center that it'll house 50 people?
Apologize,
You don't have everything memorized? I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
But with Wise Tires, I believe that's the name of the business, when they're closed, that's in addition to the 15 parking spaces that you mentioned.
Yes, there are how many parking spaces?
So, according to our zoning ordinance, the amount of parking that's required is based upon the attendees, so it's one parking space for every 3 persons. And this would then be based upon the
Okay.
maximum live
So then
load.
15 to 20 spaces would meet that requirement?
Right.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any further comments? No? We have an application. Oh, I thought that's what I did the first time. Public hearing for this application is open. We do not have anyone signed up. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this application that didn't sign up?
I'll second it. We're very good friends, and building that space that she wants to use, that's been.
Okay, sir, if you would come to the podium, please.
That's been pretty much empty for the last year and a half.
Yes, sir, just state your name and address and speak up into the mic.
My name is Lawrence Nogar. I live at 145 Lumar in Smithfield. And I've owned that building for about 30 years. And for the last over 20 years, the front part of it used to be
Used to be a dance studio, wasn't it?
it was
At
a
one time?
dance studio, but it originally started out as a automotive showroom. And we made a dance studio out of that part of the studio. It's separate from the tire shop in the back. And Patsy approached me and said she had a good idea about it, and I agree with it. We need more crossover for older people and different communities of people, you know. The fact that we're only 2 doors away from the police department is good is good for these kind of events, because you know, if there's music and it draws younger people in, well, we don't want any gang wars.
That might be an advantage.
So my only question is, will the police, you know, support, you know, like having a squad car or 2 on the property? But I'm happy with her plans and what we're going to do, and I'm looking forward to some good times in the future.
All right, thank you, sir.
And I'm glad to be here and meet you all.
Yeah, thank you. Public hearing portion of this application is closed. No one else signed up. Okay. We have an application. Any planning commission comments? No more?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this this application as presented with staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion first, and we got several seconds. You can choose who you put down, I guess. The vice chairman, Hilligas, yeah, she worked. Okay, call for the question.
Dr. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Swecker?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Yoko?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilligas? Yes. And Chairman Bryan?
Yes,
Thank you.
the motion passed. Thank you. Next up, item number 7, public hearing. Special sign exception. This is 1119 South Church Street, Farmers Bank of Windsor, Virginia, care of Michael Burdett, applicant. We have the report, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. The applicant wishes to erect a double-sided detached monument sign. It's 10 foot, 8 inches wide by 11 foot, 8 inches tall by 24 inches wide, located at 1119 South Church Street. The proposed monument sign will have a total area of approximately 63.11 square feet. They have requested a special sign exception pursuant to the Smithfield zoning ordinance, Article 10M. As a sign conflicts with the following sections. 10E7, the sign would have a 36.44 square foot changeable message area, which exceeds the 25% of the entire sign area. The changeable message area would be 57.74% of the sign area. The detached monument sign would have a sign area of 63.11 square feet, which exceeds the 32 square foot maximum allowed for detached signs in the HRC zoning district. And finally, the proposed sign will be located approximately 8 feet from the right-of-way property line along South Church Street instead of the required 10 feet. The applicant has indicated that they would be willing to relocate the sign outside of the existing required 10 feet. The proposed sign will be supported by 2 internally placed 6-inch steel poles set in concrete footings and feature 4 decorative columns, a 36.44 square foot LED electronic changeable message sign, and a 23.11 square foot gold town bank logo and crest resting on a navy blue background with 2 thin gold colored borders at the top and bottom of the sign. The applicant has provided a compliant landscaping plan in accordance with SCO Article 10, Section E6 for the proposed detached sign, including 6 boxwood shrubs, 18 annuals, and a variety of other perennials and grasses and ground coverings. Town staff do recommend approval under the following condition. This approval applies solely to the sign shown in the submitted plans, and any replacement sign, if larger or substantially different from this one, must be reviewed and decided by the Planning Commission and the Town Council if applicable. The applicant must submit a landscaping bond in the amount of $3,008.40, which is 120% of the total landscaping costs, along with the sign application and fee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would you like to speak on behalf? Okay. Being a public hearing, we have no one signed up for this application? Okay, none signed up. Is there anyone who didn't sign up care to speak? Yes, sir.
I'm Jeff Brooks, and I'm still at 320 Gray Street.
We got you.
Well, I had to state for the record. I apologize. I did not actually look into that total application, but your town council did a very thorough job about entrance corridor overlays and what we want to see coming in from the bypass, what we want to see coming in from Church Street. And an illuminated sign, to me, doesn't seem to fit. And I will say that I'm a Town Bank fan. Every penny I own and every penny I owe is tied to Town Bank. Absolutely love Town Bank. In fact, they just gave me a home equity line to do a bunch of work in my backyard. So it's nothing against Town Bank, but I think that you guys need to look at this as does this fit with what we're trying to do? And the town vision for 2035 just came out, and me and Mr. Pack did a lot of research and did a lot of discussions, and we had disagreements, but we also had agreements. I would be wary of allowing that particular type of sign in the entrance corridor. So, thank you.
Mr. Brooks? Anyone else? Seeing none. Public comments. Close. Planning Commission comments.
Well, one of my first comments was going to be with the 10-foot setback and everything. I'm glad you said that they said they could move it, because that was going to be one of my questions is, could they not locate this so that they didn't need an exception from the 10-foot rule? And then the second part of that was sort of what you just brought up, was how bright an LED is this, and is this going to light up and distract everything from the traffic signal and everything else that's going on in that intersection? Is it one of these LEDs that's going to light up the whole intersection and everything all night? So,
haven't we brought this up before about these electrical signs that can be changed and stuff, and we decided that that was just not going to happen? You agree with me?
Yes, sir. I do.
Yeah, I think the only ones we've allowed have been for gas stations. I think we had a request for one.
For the price changes on gas stations,
Yeah, for price. I think we've had requests
Royal Farms.
from
Some others.
pharmacies before, and I think we opted not to do that. I think it's a slippery slope. I think the site in general is just enormous. And like Mr. Brooks, we have interest in Town Bank as well. I don't hate Town Bank. But it's just, it's a really huge sign, and I don't think the LED thing is the way to go in entrance corridor.
Yeah, but I agree with everybody that spoke so far. The sign is more attractive than the one that's there, if you remove the message board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I would encourage the applicant to start fresh, and bring us back something that is approvable, and that meets our historic overlay district,
I agree.
and our sign ordinances. So I would make a motion that we deny this application as presented.
Second.
Did anyone do a line of sight analysis on this?
We did confer with the Department of Public Works, and if you notice on the picture on page 23 of the PDF, we had them relocate their landscaping so that you would be able to see in between the two columns and through the sign, as opposed to previously they did have larger bushes that completely blocked that view.
Well, if they bring this back to us, we would encourage to make sure that the line of sight is appropriate. 'Cause that's a tough corner to turn out sometimes. VDOT has pretty specific standards to line of sight.
And these LEDs, are they lighting from the inside or are they from the ground?
LED signs are internally lit.
Internal.
Yes.
But this sign is also changeable, right?
It's a message board. It's
It's a
essentially a
message
TV.
board.
Yeah.
And we've been down this road before.
Correct.
There is an example of this sign at Hill Point, High Point or Hill Point or whatever it is in Suffolk, right next to Otis.
Okay. Any further comment?
Only a further comment. Are we anticipating any future development of this corner? I know the bike path is somewhere in the future, and I'm gonna have to redo Church Street, but is this corner gonna be part reworkable at some point in the future? Because if it's so, then any future sign that we get should make sure there's adequate enough room to account for any future construction at this corner.
Dr. Pope, to answer your question, there's no telling. I mean, it is possible, but I'm also not aware of anything planned, and this corner is fairly well built out. You know, I mean, across the street could certainly change, but I see the bank and rural farms staying pretty well how they are.
Didn't know if it was stealing real estate a little bit to say, hey, we gotta change this corner about 5 or 6 feet, so it encroaches.
No, that all has to do with lighting and their traffic plan.
Are you talking about the changes at that intersection in reference to Mallory Point? They're supposed to do some changes to that intersection.
The only changes in their traffic plan has to do with the timing of the
Just the
lights.
timing
There's
of the
no
light.
additional lane changes there with their improvements.
Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none. We have a motion to deny this application and a second. Call for the vote.
Mr. Yoko?
Yes, I concur with denying the application.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Dr. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Swecker?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hillegas?
Yes.
And Chairman Bryan.
Yes, the application fails. Okay. Item number 8, we have the public hearing. This is for, I guess that's tax plat?
Correct.
ID number 21A, tag 040000117, The Grange. LSMP LLC, care of Melissa Venable, applicant. Could we have the staff report, please?
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes.
if I may real quick, I am recusing myself from this vote tonight, as I've stated many times, but I've also been advised that the best way to recuse myself from the vote is if I'm not in the room during the discussion. So I will be leaving during this discussion, and I will encourage my fellow planning commissioners to listen to the public, to discuss this thoroughly, because if we don't discuss it, two things happen. It looks like A, we either have our mind already made up, or B, we don't know what's going on, and neither one of those are a good look for us. We were a little quiet at our last meeting, and I would hope that you guys discuss this further and ask all the questions that you care to ask. And when you make up your minds in any direction that you choose fit, make sure that you feel good with the decision you make and you can back it up, because this is a tough subject to agree. So anyhow, that's all I have about that. I am recusing myself from this vote by removing myself from the room. It was interesting because I was told that my thoughts, my looks can become apparent. And I could say, well, yes or no, and I don't want that. I want to stay out of this. I've been trying to do it from the beginning. So with that, I'll be headed home. So good luck and thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pei. Good evening. Okay.
Are you ready for the staff report?
Yes, could we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, sir. The applicant is proposing to construct 304 total units. There will be 5 cottages, short-term rentals, 34 55-foot wide duplex unit lots, 14 60-foot wide single-family dwelling unit lots, and 39 65-foot wide single-family dwelling unit lots, and 212 apartments. The proposed development will not be age-restricted and will be privately regulated and maintained by an owners association. There are various amenities, including parking, pedestrian bicycle paths, sidewalks, public streets, private travelways, street lighting, and approximately 12 acres of open space in the form of gardens, parks, future recreation, pickleball courts, and trails. The project also includes the 2-story Smithfield Market, which will host at least 1 restaurant, retail space, and several vendor spaces. The Smithfield Market is expected to be sold to the public sector, Isle of Wight County Economic Development Authority. The 3-story hotel will not exceed 42 feet, is also proposing retail space and a restaurant space. There will be a 1-story retail building, 2-story professional office, and a 1-story medical office building. Additional improvements include 2 parking areas near the Christian Outreach Building and the Schoolhouse Museum. The proposed development can be accessed via 5 entrances, 1 on the future extension of James Street in front of the YMCA, 1 on the extension of Grace Street, 2 off Main Street, and a right-in only off of Route 10. Following the site-specific nature of the PMUD, the applicants have crafted their application package to include the following. The first is a rezoning. This is a conditional official zoning map amendment. The desired use of the property would be classified as single-family attached and detached dwellings, duplex residential dwellings, and a mix of residential dwelling types as set forth above. Community buildings, swimming pools, quasi-public parks, fields, and related facilities, eating established hotels, offices, and medical offices, and retail sales. These are all permitted uses in Article 3J2B of the Planned Mixed-Use Development PMUD District. The applicants are also proposing multi-family residential dwellings, which are a special use permit. Secondly, a future land use map amendment. This would be a comprehensive plan amendment. The future land use map, almost the entirety of the property is designated as commercial mixed use in the future land use map. This designation encompasses 9 parcels, which make up the majority of the proposed site. There is 1 remaining parcel that is designated as historic district residential, and then 10 smaller parcels that are designated as historic district mixed use. The first special use permit is for multifamily residential dwellings. This is in accordance with Article 3J2C1. This is a special use permit for 212 apartments. They will be located on the east side of the property, close to Route 10, and comprised of 5 3-story buildings and 2 4-story buildings. 3 of the 5 3-story buildings are 15 carriage houses over garages. These proposed multifamily buildings will feature a maximum height of 52 feet for the 4-story and 39 feet for the 3-story. Accompanying the multifamily residential development will be a 2-story clubhouse less than 35 feet in height with a pool and a dog park. The second special use permit is for a waiver of maximum density. The applicant is seeking an additional SUP for a waiver of maximum density. According to Article 3J2D, the maximum allowable density for multifamily dwellings is 12 dwelling units per net developer acre. The applicants are proposing a density of 27.5 dwelling units per developer acre for the multifamily dwellings. The overall density for the entire project is 7.9 dwelling units per acre, including the single-family and duplex units. Isolated, the single-family and duplex dwellings are 3.4 dwelling units per net developer acre. Article 3J2D allows for 8 dwelling units per acre for attached and 5 dwelling units per acre for detached dwellings. Third special use permit is for a waiver of maximum building height in accordance with Article 3J2C24. This would be for the 2 4-story multifamily apartments, 5 3-story multifamily apartments, and for the hotel. The two 4-story multifamily buildings will not exceed 52 feet in height, and the 5 3-story multifamily buildings will not exceed 39 feet in height. The hotel will not exceed 42 feet in height. The remaining buildings, including the Smithfield Farmers Market, retail, office, medical office, and single-family dwellings, will not exceed 35 feet in height. The fourth special use permit is for a waiver of parking and loading requirements under Article 3J2C18. This would be for relief from Article 8E29, which requires a minimum of 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit plus 1 visitor space for every 3 units for multifamily dwellings, and Article 8B4, which requires off-street parking to be located on the same lot. The applicants are providing 2 parking spaces per unit for the multifamily dwellings, which is 424 spaces, instead of the required 495 parking spaces. The applicants are also proposing a shared parking agreement for the development, including off-street parking. Finally, the applicant is seeking relief from Article 8B17 and Article 8F1E to allow off-street loading spaces to also count towards required parking spaces. The remaining parking spaces for the restaurant, retail, office, hotel, Smithfield Market, and medical offices are in conformance with the zoning ordinance. The fifth special use permit is for a waiver of yard requirements. This is for relief for the required yard setbacks in 3J2F2B that requires a 40-foot front yard setback, a 20-foot side yard setback, and a 20-foot rear yard setback. The applicants are proposing the following commercial yard setbacks: a 0 front yard setback, a 10 side yard setback, and then complying with the 20-foot rear yard setback. They are seeking a reduction of 40 feet for the front yard and a reduction of 10 feet for the commercial side yard setback. Additionally, Article 3J2F2B requires the following yard setbacks for residential. That would be a 35-foot front yard setback, a 15-foot side yard setback, and a 35-foot rear yard setback. The applicants are proposing for residential yard setbacks a 14-foot front yard setback, a 10-foot side yard setback, and a 25-foot rear yard setback. They are seeking a reduction 21 feet for the residential front yard setback, 5 feet for the side yard setback, and 10 feet for the residential rear yard setback. Additionally, the applicants are seeking a reduction in the required front yard setback for the multifamily dwellings of 25 feet, allowing for a 10-foot front yard setback. Finally, the applicants are requesting a waiver of yard requirements in accordance with Article 3J2C20 in order to allow a smaller setback requirement where the property is contiguous to a separate zoning district. This would be the Schoolhouse Museum property, which is zoned downtown. The sixth special use permit would be for the short-term rentals. The applicants are seeking a 6th SUP to allow for 5 short-term rental units. Each unit is a single detached single-family dwelling that will be utilized as a rental property. Following the staff report are the enclosures from the various comments and agencies that we had received. An updated TIA was submitted to VDOT on Wednesday, May 3rd, and we are currently awaiting any additional comments. All comments of this application can be viewed in the pages immediately succeeding the staff report and the various enclosures. Pursuant to Smithfield Zoning Ordinance Section 484, the Planning Commission does have until Thursday, July 20th, 2023 to decide on this application before it is automatically forwarded to the Town Council with a recommendation for approval. Please keep in mind, based on the comments received and in accordance with the documentary study, town staff do suggest an archaeological monitoring of the ground disturbance during development. Also, throughout the site plan and general development plan, we did notice that the BMP changed throughout the project, and we would just verify stormwater management study prior to site plan approval. Comments received from Isle of Wight County Schools anticipate a budgetary impact with additional students generated from the project. That would be our enclosure 3. The Commissioner of Revenue, enclosure 2. Enclosure 3 is Commissioner of the Revenue's Office. Planning Department's model in enclosure 4. Isle of Wight County Museum does highly recommend a Phase 1 archaeological survey. VDOT, again, these were the previous comments, not with the updated TIA, so we will provide those once received. The Police Department in enclosure 7, and the Department of Public Works in enclosure 8. At the Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did task staff with answering the following questions. What is the current situation concerning the farmers market? It currently has a year-to-year lease agreement with the BSV Bank, which we believe would be up for renewal in March. What are the details of the infrastructure partnership at this phase of the project? We do not have an answer. Isle of Wight Economic Development position. We did include an email received from Christopher Morello, who's the director of Isle of Wight Economic Development, that we included following this staff report. How much will the infrastructure cost? Again, at this phase of the project, we do not have an answer. Number 5, what is the procedure and is it possible for getting a speed bump on Grace Street? What is the procedure and is it possible to make the intersection of Grace Street and Carey Street a 4-way stop? We did reach out to VDOT. VDOT indicated it is not possible to have a speed bump on Grace Street as it is a primary route. It is possible to make the intersection at Grace and Carey a 4-way stop. This can go through a request from the town. It would then go to the traffic and engineering review at VDOT to consider if it is appropriate, or it can go to VDOT as part of this application with appropriate modeling and included as a recommendation. What are the estimated totals for possible school enrollments accounting for all approved development within the town and county, even if construction has not commenced? We did reach out to Lynn Briggs. We're currently awaiting an answer. However, there is a third PDF open on your computers. That was a study compiled in 2018 that she was able to provide us. They are currently updating that study and do not expect it to be completed until the end of the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman, we asked the people to speak into the mic. I'm in the first row. I can barely hear her, sir.
Yes, please, remember, you're also being viewed at home. Please speak clearly into the mic. Thank you. We have the director's report. Is the applicant here? The applicant? Is there anything you would like to add at this time?
Good evening. With me tonight, I have the same team we had here a month ago. We have John Gibson, Bruce Berlin, and Chip Brown from Venture Realty Group, and Melissa Venable from Land Planning Solutions. So we had the same team that presented to you all 30 days ago. What I'd like to say is, number one, we heard you. We got some great feedback from Planning Commission. We got comments from people in the audience, and you're going to see a revised plan with continued overall improvements based upon feedback that we received last month. Melissa Venable will share that with you shortly. Second thing I'd like to say is that this is a transformational project. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something special with a very important piece of downtown Smithfield on the western entrance. And we've taken a lot of time, put a lot of thought into this project, and we think what we're presenting is a tremendous plan that will improve the viability of downtown. An analysis has been done, and the net economic benefit over a 25-year period to both the town and the county exceeds $25 million. Let me say that again. The net economic benefit, which is the incremental revenue less the cost associated with this project, is in excess of $1 million a year, or over $25 million over a 25-year period. I'll go into greater details after Melissa presents the revised plan about the contributions and the proffers, and additional comments on the economic analysis. We've done extensive traffic analysis in conjunction with VDOT, and our proposed road plan is sufficient for this project, in our opinion. Again, we are awaiting one final revised report, but based upon the information that we provided, we believe that this plan addresses the traffic needs for the overall community. While we don't anticipate the need for additional parking based upon our plan, we do have green space in front of the market that could be available for future parking should it be needed. And we all know that the farmers market peaks during the Christmas holiday period, and that green space, if necessary, could be used for overflow parking at that time. But our parking analysis also supports the fact that we have sufficient parking for this project. Last thing I want to emphasize, which I said last time, and I can't reiterate this enough. Smithfield Foods is vital to this town, and the town has lost jobs to other communities in Tidewater because the town of Smithfield lacks certain amenities that are needed by the employees of Smithfield Foods. And this project addresses a lot of the needs of Smithfield Foods. I met with them on multiple occasions to understand what their needs were, and we included that in this project. So while there are things in this project that some are going to object to, they are needs that Smithfield Foods has, and I think ultimately the town will benefit from. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to take you through the revised plans.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners and residents. Thank you for hearing us this evening. Once again, my name is Melissa Venable. I'm the president of Land Planning Solutions. I'm going to skip around real quickly in light of what Mr. Luter just mentioned and go to a parking analysis plan that we have towards the end of the presentation here. And I'm only doing that because it's been updated. And this is in reference to the parking that Mr. Luter, the shared parking agreement that we will have in place that we're asking for as one of the special use permits, coupled with a study that we reviewed that was accepted within Hampton Roads. It's a study that was done by Volkert, and it looks at shared parking within mixed-use communities just like this. Now, I know that we, again, have another use permit asking for 2.3 parking spaces to be reduced down to 2. But in this study, they were suggesting, and they state that the highest amount of parking in a mixed-use development is, for multifamily, is 1.7 spaces. The reason I bring that up is if I subtract out the difference between the 2.0 and the 1.7, and again, show several parking spaces within multifamily as shared parking, as well as all the highlighted spaces here as shared parking available for the market. We actually have 400 spaces on any given Saturday morning that would be available for the market. That subtracts out the 1.7 spaces for multifamily, the required spaces for the hotel, the required spaces for the retail. And the reason we were able to project new numbers, again, is with this study, but also because we've reduced the amount of retail that we're showing on site, which will now bring me back to the beginning of the presentation. But I wanted to point that out because 400 spaces is well over and well exceeds the number of spaces that are available today for the market. And obviously the market that we're proposing is a larger facility, but 400 spaces, we feel very, very comfortable that will provide the amount of parking spaces for large events, for holidays and things like that. So we're really happy with that. Like I said, bringing that Volkert study together with the reduction that that was introduced to us at the last meeting based on some of the comments that the planning commissioners had. So I thank you for that. So moving on to the previous site plan we introduced last month. There are several things we talked about last month. We discussed circulation, road improvements, entrances into the site, the realignment of entrances along Main Street. We talked about the number of homes, the retail space, the hotel, and the market. We discussed, very importantly, the walkability of the site, but more importantly, the walkability from downtown to this site, extending Main Street down to Route 10, which I think we're all very excited about, and the positive growth that would come with the opportunities that this site and the proposal would provide. And it is important to us, as it's important to you, and in the comprehensive plan, mitigating any negative impacts that this would bring. And that would include the additional utilities that we've talked about that we would need to provide, and again, the additional traffic improvements, as well as the fiscal impact analysis and the positive growth. So the new site plan, because what we heard loud and clear is the farmers market, we like the Smithfield market. It's a good building, it's good architecture, and we want to see it more from Main Street. So we went back to the drawing board right after that meeting, and we quickly reduced, we again, looked at numbers, looked at can we do this, and we eliminated a building on the east side of our Grain Street entrance. Thank you for pointing that out, Tip, I appreciate it. We eliminated that building altogether. On the west side of the entrance, we reduced the footprint and brought that down to a one-story building as opposed to a two-story building. So that shows us just a 5,000 square foot building now. And that allows us to have very good visibility from Main Street into the site, looking directly at the farmers market and opening up the site triangle as well. What that also did, as you mentioned in your presentation, Tammy, is that allowed us to expand the pond in case there was any concern that that pond wouldn't be large enough. And when we get to site plan, we will be able to do a better analysis, a final analysis of the water that will capture. So in the last plan, it shrunk down a little bit, and that caused a little bit of concern, but now it's grown even bigger, so we feel very comfortable with the size of that pond. It also allows for that parking that's up front to be completely available for the market in very close proximity. So we're excited about that, and we actually thank the planning commissioners for providing the comments and their thoughts, because I think that represents several of the thoughts and concerns that we heard. So we wanted to make sure, thank you, Tip, we wanted to make sure that what you see here is the park area, a larger park area that would be available for gathering. There's walkability around the pond, and then that would connect to the Main Street walks, as well as the walks that are internal to the site. We would have benches in place, trash receptacles, and a picket fence that would surround the pond for safety measures. And I think we have some details to follow on the next slide or two, where you can see some of the materials we're starting to pull together as the hardscape for that area, as well as what you would see throughout the community. So we have bike racks, like I said, the aluminum fencing that would surround the pond, the lighting that would reflect the same lighting along Main Street, and then lighting as we get further into the site, the gang mailbox areas, waste receptacles, and benches. The other thing we wanted to discuss, and I'll actually jump into the traffic study, as you mentioned, and we're working, there were two studies, or I'm sorry, there were two reports that came back to us, which we were actually a little bit surprised about, but glad that everyone's being so thorough. VDOT came back with comments on March 31st, and then on April 17th, I guess the town of Smithfield had hired a second consultant, and they provided quite a bit of comment. So on May 3rd, we were able to address all of those comments, and I'm happy to say that when we addressed all of those comments, that included new synchronization, I'm not going to say that right, new studies for counts, revised analysis, corrections to some things that needed to be corrected, and working with Jason Fowler, all of our recommendations that were in our original traffic impact analysis had stayed the same. So I'm happy to report that, and we're waiting just now for VDOT to get back to us. But also, we have talked to VDOT, we've talked to town officials, we talked to Smithfield Foods CEO, and we are working together to erect several prominent street signs to better direct traffic patterns to Berry Hill Road and try to get traffic away from, especially cut-through traffic, and the workers for Smithfield Food that work at the plant, we're trying to get them from cutting through town and having signage that takes you to Berry Hill Road. And we're starting that now, not waiting for this project to be approved to do that. We also revised our multifamily elevations to improve on the color that you saw last time, reduce the heights, and review material. So here's the three-story building that you saw the same image or similar image previously, but like I said, we approved on several things, specifically the colors. These are colors that you would see downtown today or in Charleston, South Carolina, as you see in the picture below the elevation. We looked closer at the building heights as well, and we were able to reduce the elevations from 42 feet for the three-story building. We sharpened our pencils, and this building could be 38.5 feet tall. And then we also looked at the four-story building for height, and we think we can, or we believe, we know that building can drop from 50 feet to 46 feet and 2 inches, because this is a flat roof. We measure this a little bit differently. We measure it to the top of the flat roof. And again, the architect looked at this more closely and knows that he can bring that down to 46 feet and 2 inches. And again, we relooked at the colors. We picked up colors that you see downtown as well as in Charleston, South Carolina. The other thing that we did is start labeling or looking at what materials we're going to be using. We know we're going to have some seamed roofs, standing seam roof details that we've included. We have brick to match the brick that would be on the market, as well as that would be brick that matches buildings downtown. You see that on the first floor of this elevation, as well as on the foundation of the 30-story elevation. Hardy board, board and batten, they're all materials that would be included in these building elevations. We have not yet, but these are elevations that would inspire our boutique hotel. And again, that would be, we have inspiration photos, and we will be looking at both Charleston inspiration as well as the Smithfield architecture. We'll have that in mind as we continue to develop the elevation for the boutique hotel as well as the retail building. And I'll be sure that these complement the Smithfield Market elevation that seemed to be very well accepted last month when we were here. I believe that covers the changes, and I'd be happy to come back up to reiterate anything we need to go back over from last month. I think Mr. Luter is also going to come back up and talk to you about some of the additional slides that we have here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We thought it was important to share some of the inspirational pictures as where we got some of the ideas. And again, to comments that were made at the last meeting, we incorporated colors that are very consistent in downtown Smithfield with the multifamily. So I want to talk a little bit about the contributions and proffers. There's been discussion as well as a cost participation agreement. This project, we have viewed this project from the beginning as a public-private partnership because of the integral part of the market. And in our view, the need to take something that is so important to downtown Smithfield and give it a permanent structure that will carry us well beyond the next 50 years. And so we viewed it as a public-private partnership, but as part of that, my father, as many know, loves this town as much or more than anybody and has been very philanthropic towards the town. I wanted to lay out for you all the cash and land contributions that our family is prepared to make towards this project. And while we are seeking variance for density on multifamily, the overall density across this 58 acres is well less than what is allowed by the PMUD. So while we have greater density in one place, we've taken great time to provide a lot of open space across the entire project. We are prepared to donate over 4 acres of the land with a land donation value of $1.445 million and a cash donation of $1 million towards the market and $100,000 to build the pickleball court, to a total contribution to this project of $2,545,500. Tip, if you'll go to the next. And as you all, I think, have seen, it was in the packet that we originally submitted. We went to great lengths to understand the fiscal impact of this project and what it means financially to both the town and the county. And I have laid out for you all to see the net cash flow benefit to the town of Smithfield in year one of $455,000, years 1 through 10 a total of $5.4 million, and years 1 through 25 $14,250,000. That is the net incremental money that this project will generate for the town to use however they see fit. On the county side, you have similar numbers, but they're different because the town receives certain benefits that the county receives, and the county gets a higher percentage of benefit from real estate taxes. But the net economic benefit to Isle of Wight County in year one is $540,000. Years 1 through 10 is $4.1 million, and years 1 through 25 is $11.56. As I indicated in my earlier comments, this project more than pays for itself, and we are not asking taxpayers to subsidize this project. So over 25 years, $27 million of net economic benefit to the town and the county will result from this project. And again, that's only one consideration, but there's been lots of conversations about proffers. There's been lots of conversation about what this costs the taxpayers. And I want you all to understand that this project is a net financial gain for both the town and the county. We have, in our earlier presentation, we did allude to the fact that we would be asking for a cost participation agreement on the part of the project that is dedicated to the public. And that is a discussion, as I understand it from conversation, that's a discussion that if the rezoning is approved, we would ask for consideration, and again, it would be an ask, a consideration of the town council at a later date should the project be approved. But if it's not approved, then obviously there's no reason to even get into that. But we will potentially make that ask. And what I can tell you is the ask will be significantly less than the economic benefit of this project. So in closing, what I'd like to say is we appreciate your consideration. We really do think that this project is going to transform the western entrance to downtown Smithfield. It's going to provide tremendous needed amenities. It's going to bring that part and help bring all of downtown to further light than's already there. I can see kids playing soccer on the green space. I can see yoga on the green space on Saturday mornings. I can see lots and lots of people playing pickleball. I can see outdoor concerts on the green space at selected times of the year. The restaurants are going to be restaurants that the town currently doesn't have. The hotel is going to provide needed hotel rooms for children and families that are coming in to participate in ball games at the ball fields. It's going to benefit Smithfield Foods. The town is currently losing no less than 10 events a year to hotels outside of Smithfield because we don't have the hotel space available for Smithfield Foods. There's so many benefits to this project for the long-term economic viability of the town of Smithfield. And that's why we've presented what we presented. That's why we're passionate about this project. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Louis. Now, this being a public hearing, the applicant has spoken. Now, the public is invited to offer comments with respect to this application. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes, and we ask that you strictly observe this time limit, as we expect to have quite a few speakers. You will be given notice when 1 minute remains in your allotted time. The Planning Commission welcomes your comments, and you are free to say whatever you wish about the project. We ask that everyone acts in a civil and respectful way, and that you refrain from any personal attacks of any kind. And so far, I think you've done that. If you agree with the comments that prior speakers have made, you may simply state that fact, and it would not be necessary to repeat those comments, and we would take note of that. We thank you in advance for your cooperation and participation in this process. We have about 13 speakers signed up for this public hearing. And the first is Mr., I believe that's retired Colonel Mark Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Gay, 110 Goose Hill Way, and I want to thank my neighbors for signing me up first tonight. I was asked to address how we got here, and I'm not going to take 5 minutes. It has now been more than 8 years since many of us here tonight first appeared before this commission at a public hearing about potential rezoning of the historic Thomas Pierce property. Which the speaker at last night's town council meeting rightly reminded dates to a 1637 land grant from the King of England. Several of you at the head table perhaps recall that initial public hearing in February 2015, in which one of your fellow commissioners stated that he had personally taken time to drive to the property and assess the feasibility of the planned 151 look-alike homes that were proposed by Mr. William Darden and his very accomplished liaison, Ms. Venable, who's here tonight. The commissioner opined that he simply could not envision a development of that planned magnitude on the 38 net developable acres of Piercefield at that time, an opinion for which the individual was quickly rebuked and reminded that the decision was not for him and the Planning Commission to make. So your commission did not vote that evening. In fact, you did not vote until August 2015, another public hearing. In the interim, some of us met privately with Ms. Venable to discuss potential changes to the Darden proposal. Lawrence Pitt, who brilliantly designed and built Windsor Castle Park for John Louis III and the town, joined Melissa and me for lunch. My strong preference was for preservation of the Pierce home and outbuildings, and for maintenance of the farmland as green space for community conservation and/or a landscape tennis park with an outdoor pool on the model of the development in Dallas, Texas that we've talked about before. Mr. Pitt's offering was for an attractive development model after the Stonehenge community north of Williamsburg. Ms. Venable did not seem interested in either of our ideas. When you did finally vote that August, 3 of you voted with the developer, using the argument that the right of the property owner took precedence under Virginia law. Nowhere in your deliberation did anyone point out that Article 1 of the town zoning ordinance offers do no harm protection to the residents of this town and the historic district. And make no mistake, the proposed Darden development posed harm then, as we believe the Luder development does this evening. Fortunately, your full commission voted 4-3 to recommend that town council deny the proposal. That vote triggered another several months of cleverly machinated twists and turns before town council ultimately rejected the proposal by a 5-2 vote, largely because of daunting infrastructure challenges and resource shortfall. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole again tonight. Suffice to say that when we appeared before you in late January last year to address our concerns about the PMUD zoning application, it was with Pierceville on our minds. One of you opined that a lot of folks are here tonight to talk about Pierceville when we were really talking only about a zoning category that has nothing to do with Pierceville. Really? Others of you agreed strongly that evening that any developmental proposal for Pierceville should be weighed on its merits against the existing community conservation zoning for the property, and that nobody could envision a Bridgeport-like development at that site. Meanwhile, we noticed that the drums continued beating by conflicted members of town council and staff to keep PMUD moving forward without any amendments to the draft zoning requirements, at the same time that it was also deemed necessary to update the comprehensive plan with special emphasis on change of the future land use map to allow for PMUD-like zoning of the Pierceville property. How coincidental. It proved an overwhelming task for concerned citizens to fight on all fronts, especially when so many admitted they had not even read the comprehensive plan. So we decided to tackle the immediate challenge of working with you to scope PMUD to a workable set of requirements. The net result of all that is what stands before you for consideration: an intensive mixed-use development with more than twice the density of the Darden proposal that the developers are arguing is anchored in PMUD zoning authorized in the comprehensive plan. Of course, PMUD is there because of clever backroom collaboration, artful dodging, and cunning. Predictably, we're also being asked to request special use permits for every single amendment that we spent several months with members of the Planning Commission to structure and define last year. I submit respectfully that enough is enough. The proposal, as currently structured, does not reflect well on Mr. Luder III's legacy to this town and should not pass muster for this commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have a Mr. Bob Hines.
Good evening, Bob Hines, 216 Washington. First off, as I stated at the last Planning Commission meeting, this project has come full circle, kind of like what Mark just said, from what you guys wrestled with many months ago. If all the waivers that are requested are granted, then striking the by right request in the PMUD, while it may show some benefit down the road this time, it'll have just been a waste of time. Many are of the opinion that the PMUD was designed around and for this project. I cannot seem to find out where the initial idea initiated. Further, why wouldn't the next developer expect the same things, along with what has been said but passed but sort of denied tonight, partly subsidized by the taxpayers? The setbacks, the density, the building heights, traffic, et cetera, in such close proximity to the historic district are problems. This will be the opening of the proverbial Pandora's box. We only know somewhat about the farmers market beyond the concept. We do not know that town council and board of, we do know that town council and board of supervisors each committed $1.4 million each with no public hearings. Was this actually legal? Even if it was it an ethical treatment of the taxpayers? Or was it one of these, we got everything under control, so just trust us? Should there have been public hearings concerning the town becoming invested in a somewhat large business venture, a viable business plan, financial prospect should be presented about the farmers market. Any business owner or anyone that works with the public knows there are just some people that no one can please. Some say not to solicit customer feedback for fear of too much complaint. Smart business owners solicit feedback and put up with a few unreasonables in order to get the positive feedback, which if listened to and applied, helps the business improve. The municipal mailer, which my understanding is, goes out to everybody in town. Many important topics are covered in it. The Sluter project is a major topic of discussion. It would have been nice if there had been an article in the latest edition highlighting the project, inviting citizens to further monitor it, and invite input as events evolve. There are many encouragements in this publication to attend a variety of less important events, but this very important major topic, nothing. There's a lot of good small farmers markets such as ours that are low budget. The North Carolina State Farmers Markets at Raleigh and Asheville are huge. I've been to both. Some are hours or 7 days a week. And they're in very near proximity to interstates. I realize we're not. But those markets do not adjoin residential or business districts or entities unto themselves. For example, the Raleigh's Farmers Market, and there's a reason I won't state this. They have covered open air 30,000 square feet for produce and plant sales. Market shops, climate controlled, 15,000 feet. Truckers building, 15,400 drive-through for large sales. There's a wholesale terminal. A whole lot of the produce that goes through the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area goes through this terminal. Market imports, similar to the old Williamsburg Pottery, over 2 acres. 2 very good restaurants. I expect they have a very large budget to go along with large sales. The enclosed farmers market here is a nice concept. Someone envisioned it eventually being open Saturday and Sunday. That indicates a vision for some growth. Certainly not as large as these other big ones. However, it would really need to grow significantly in order to pay back the taxpayers' investment. Where does Main Street Baptist then park on Sunday? How about funerals? Finally,
1 minute.
the plan, if one could call it that, in regards to farmers market, with no more space than is proposed, how can it grow? Nowhere. On the other hand, if the plan for growth is minimal, then I ask again, how's the initial investment going to be recovered and ongoing expenses be covered? I dare say that a new farmers market would have the large budget without the large sales to be self-supporting, much less pay back the initial investment. One other thing I have to ask, though, is we've been told there's a survey about graves, but I haven't heard anything about that at the meeting, so I would like to know what the results of the searching for graves is. Thank you.
Mr. Irons, thank you. Next up, we have a Mr. Brad Face.
I'm Brad Face. I live at 334 South Church Street. I'm here representing historic Smithfield. And I must say, I go along with the idea of everybody being civil with everyone. And in the case of historic Smithfield, we have to think back to our origin 30 years ago. And when we turned to the idea of saving downtown Smithfield from the situation it was in, we turned to Mr. Luter III. So I think it would be wrong of us not to recognize that Smithfield wouldn't be worth protecting as much had he not stepped in again and again when our organization, Historic Smithfield, asked him to. That is not to say that this project should not rise and fall on its own merits. It has to. This is a really important development, and it will define the future of Smithfield. We recognize that at Historic Smithfield. We could have addressed you on several different issues, but we decided to focus on traffic. I did email this package of information, which Ms. Clary has. So on traffic, we're quite concerned, having looked at traffic since I've lived in Smithfield in 1986 and been very involved. East-west traffic is 4 lanes. Historic Church Street and the bypass. So that's what I'm focused on as we look at it, is what is going to be the impact of this draw on this side of town and what traffic is going to be created. So we request a traffic impact study be conducted with the Grange through build-out which would include currently forecast traffic from previously approved developments. What's that east-west traffic going to look like when all those things are built out? Because there's no more capacity. There's only one lane each way. And how can we prevent people from going what's been called the back way to go from the James River Bridge, especially Nike Park Road extended in the future to points west and south? We have suggested looking at an improvement to Cary Street, Mill Swamp, where it crosses the bypass. VDOT, when it first drew the bypass design, accommodated drop-down ramps. So imagine you're going to Surrey on the bypass, and you approach the overpass for Cary Street, Mill Swamp. You would take a ramp up to a stop sign on Cary Street, and you could go left and right. And on the other side, coming from Mill Swamp, you could drop down on a ramp coming to East Bypass. That would pull traffic out of having to go through downtown Smithfield, through the historic district, to arrive at this site. So I would really think that those data would do a great job at understanding the total impact at build-out, along with all the other things the county and the town has approved. A little point, but I think it needs to be looked at, an evaluation in consultation with VDOT to determine whether the Grange Street, Grace Street future intersection meets with FHWA design criteria, since it is a federal road. As we looked at it, it looks like very, very tight radii, and with the stop signs, pedestrian crossings. It's not something that we're all upset about. It's just something I think needs to be looked at. And we may be behind on the data, so our last comment is evaluating the parking capacity at the farmers market when everyone's home, like on the weekends. But I understand that's already been addressed since the last time we saw the plan. Thank you.
Mr. Face? The next signed-up speaker we have is Mr. Bob Delinsky. Sir, and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Bob Delansky, 210 Cary Street here in the town of Smithfield. I had some remarks to make, but I do agree with the last two speakers, so a lot of what I had to say I'm not going to repeat. One of the things that I am very concerned about is the traffic on Cary Street. I have to back out of my driveway to get onto Cary Street to go anywhere here in town. It's getting to the point where I can't do that. The traffic is already really bad. Adding all those new homes just on the other side of us is going to only make that worse, unless we find a way to mitigate that traffic, the increase in traffic going through there. The other thing that hasn't been addressed is the traffic coming up Route 10. When I come up Route 10, there are times when I'm sitting at Church Street waiting to go and make a right turn on Main Street. I mean, that traffic is ridiculous, and to add all those new homes, all those single families, all the duplexes, all the apartments, all those new residents have to get there somehow. And when we're adding on to the Mallory Farms and all the extra vehicles that are going that way, now it's going to be Church Street's getting hard to make. If you have to make a left, getting out of Food Line or any of the businesses along Church Street, good luck. I mean, the traffic is so heavy. We really need to consider this stuff before we would approve this project. The other concern that I have is what's going to be the cost of the infrastructure, and how much money do the taxpayers have to put out to subsidize this? I have never, ever seen in my life, and I've not done that many projects, especially of this size, where the developer would actually get reimbursed for putting in infrastructure. That was something that they put in and then gave to the town after the project was completed. I have never seen that where they got money back. They're making money with this building project. The restaurant, we're building the restaurant for whoever is going to run it. He's got no money out of pocket to get that part of it started. And yet, we, the taxpayers of Alawite County and the town of Smithfield, are donating money to get that started for him. What kind of rent is he going to be paying? How are we going to be making money, that money back as time goes by? These are questions that I have not seen answered. I haven't seen any plans for the infrastructure, heard any specific information about it. And I'm kind of curious, when you're going to start taking money out of my pocket for my taxes, I'm kind of interested in how you're going to spend it. And I appreciate hearing some more information about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dolinsky. Next speaker we have tonight is Mr. Richard Lanier. Mr. Lanier?
Good evening.
Yes.
I am
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Richard Lanier, Senior, 101 Prestwick. Chairman Bryant, Planning Commission members and staff. I have lived in Smithfield over 18 years. I would like to bring to your attention 3 issues concerning the proposed grain development plan: safety, aesthetics, and parking. Safety is my first concern. The plan for the grain development includes 3 open detention ponds. They are commonly called BMP ponds, best management practices. That can be questionable. The proposed open pond that I am most concerned about, I just shared, is going to be enlarged. It would be located on Main Street near the Schoolhouse Museum, across from Main Street Baptist Church and the Manor apartment complex where many children live. The safety concerns should not be without question. The proposed open pond on Main Street would receive additional runoff from another BMP pond, located in the rear area of homes on State Route 258. A covered underground BMP pond would eliminate the safety concern. Requesting a covered BMP pond is not unreasonable. Main Street Baptist Church, a small church, has a covered underground pond in the back area of the church because safety was the main concern. We're talking about young children. I don't care how many fence or what type of fence you put around. When I was young, a fence didn't stop me. And if you're a parent, you understand. Aesthetic is my second concern. Imagine yourself on Main Street heading toward the downtown area of Smithfield. Can you imagine one of the first signs of welcome you see is an open pond? That's not our historic Smithfield. Parking is my third concern. Will there be adequate parking? Now, I did hear that parking has been added, but will that be enough? Someone did mention parking, the concern for parking for Main Street Baptist Church. An underground BP pond with a parking lot above it is possible. If you have enough parking, then use it for a park. That would be more of a welcoming sight. My main concerns are safety, aesthetics, and additional parking. Thank you.
Mr. Linier, thank you. Next, we have Miss Mary Harris.
Good evening. Do we need a PMUD or any similar
I'm
development?
sorry, name and address for the record, please.
Mary Harris, 329 Gray Street. Do we really need a PMUD or any similar development in our historic area of Smithfield? There are many reasons to say no. Some cannot be quantified, like quality of life, the feel and charm of Smithfield, and peace and quiet of a smaller town. There is no doubt that this development will damage all of these things. Other reasons can be quantified, like increased costs to taxpayers, costs in the form of police, fire, emergency services, schools, roadways, infrastructure, and the availability of amenities. One area that can be quantified I want to talk about tonight. It's new housing developments that are in process and are coming. There are many homes with a variety of prices, sizes, and amenities that have been approved in the town of Smithfield that are being built or will be built in the coming near term. Within the town of Smithfield, development includes 812 homes in Mallory Farm, 152 homes in Cypress Creek, 74 homes in Churchill, 12 homes in Luter Acres, 150 homes in the park at Battery, 5 at least buildable lots I know in our neighborhood. That's a total of 1,205 homes. If you add in this proposal of 304 at the 10 Grange in Maine, we are looking at 1,509 in the town of Smithfield just with these developments. I am very concerned about what has already been approved and our absorption of this large amount of growth in a very short time. But let's look further and expand our lens and look at the development that immediately abuts Smithfield. We can add in over another 2,700. This makes for a quantity of new homes of at least 4,209 in the immediate area. My numbers are conservative. For example, I did not consider the additional homes being built in Ben's Grant development or others in the planning stage. The developments around the town include such areas as Sweetgrass, The Crossings, Ben's Grant, Brewer Station, Timber Preserve, St. Luke's Village, South Harbor, Bridgepoint Commons, Brewer Station, Eagle Harbor Tract 8. That's a lot. On and on and on. One of the arguments for the Grange is there is no available housing for new hires at Smithfield Foods. The developments already approved offer both the number and variety of homes that could appeal to the employees of Smithfield Foods and to others who desire moving into Smithfield and the surrounding areas. In addition, we know there are many other large tracts of land on the market or have pending sales that most likely will be used to build more homes. Some postings call Isle of Wight a boom town. I read that today. Is this what Smithfield wants to be called? Is this the legacy we want? As I mentioned in the past, people do call us Little Newport News. Another Chesapeake, another Greenbrier. I don't think this is our goal. Do you? Let's circle back to the rezoning application for the PMUD. This development is being proposed on our most significant historical site, the Pierceville Farm. I believe without any doubt that this land is a treasure trove of archaeological items. If you have not read the history of Pierceville, you need to before moving forward on anything on this property. You can read that history in Sig DeShield's book, which I think we all are pretty familiar with. In addition, I ask you to consider a statement that was made about this property a while back by a gentleman named Mark Wagner, an architectural historian for the Virginia Department of Historic Resources in Richmond. Wagner stated, "It is a property that may yield significant historic information, valuable for the town and the region." I don't have time to touch on my favorite topic of traffic, but it will be an untenable situation for most of us and our citizens. Our comprehensive plan has the goal of reducing traffic and making town more pedestrian. If we truly are implementing this plan, and it was not just an exercise required to be completed, we can't continue adding any new developments, especially in PMUD in downtown. Thank you.
Mrs. Harris, thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Carolyn Torrey. Yes, name and address for the record,
Carolyn
please.
Torrey, 32 Main Street. I'm reading this for my husband, Chris, who's out of town. I'd like to discuss tax with you for a little bit this evening. The Pierceville property most recently earned taxable income as a farm. The going rate for farmland out in the country around here was about $4,000 per acre. Ms. Crocker sold her place for 10 times the going rate. The potential for development was driving the price. Several developers with interest in building homes circled around her deal, as there was no way then to ask for rezoning into multi-use. The price, based on a far lesser potential for development, was still very high, about 10 times the market rate. With the flick of your wrist, the stroke of your pen, you can inflate the value of that 50 acres at least 300% more. If that parcel becomes zoned multi-purpose, you will have made it one of the most desirable, undeveloped pieces of property on the East Coast, Florida to Maine. The return on the current landlord's investment will amount to a fortune before he even sticks a blade in the ground out there. A pretty good deal. But that's not enough. The developer wants us to buy a building out there for $2.8 million of tax money and move our farmers market to it. For him, he wants us to subsidize his hotel and restaurant operation with another bunch of tax, what he calls an economic incentive. He wants us to share in the cost of furnishing and installing the entire infrastructure for his project with more tax money, and he apparently wants us to pay for his downstream impacts on the public facilities. But he won't say how much an economic incentive will cost us, how much tax subsidy his infrastructure will cost. He won't tell us what the cost of his impacts are on our public facilities, like roads and water and storm drainage and traffic control or traffic safety, as no real proffers were submitted with his application for rezoning. Here's the thing, he is aware of those costs. He has an architect, engineers, consultants on board. He has a staff. They have been baking this deal for at least 18 months we know of, probably more. They have to know their costs inside and out by now. And if they haven't figured it out themselves, there are all kinds of construction cost estimating firms out there which don't do anything but put numbers together for a fee. They know their downstream impact costs, the ones they should have proffered. They know their infrastructure costs to the nickel. Why don't they tell us? Do you suppose that maybe they are waiting for rezoning approval before the other shoe drops? Do you suppose the combination of the $2.8 million to buy a building, plus the economic incentive, plus the infrastructure cost, plus the cost of paying to fix the development's impacts on our existing public facilities combined is just too much? Do you suppose that if the developer told us what's in store now, it would sour the approval or start a taxpayer protest? But there's more. The developer does not like our multi-use zoning rules as Smithfield wrote them. He wants the rules changed, just for him, to greater density than we allow, fewer parking spaces than we require, taller structures than we favor, shoved closer to the street than is acceptable here, built closer to each other than we want them to be, with smaller backyards than we specify. He's going to give us a housing tract of skinny little lots with houses on top of the street and inadequate parking so he can squeeze in more and sell more and rent more units to make more money for him. How's that sound to you? Just like a little too much, maybe? Doesn't that sound like it is fair and reasonable use of public tax money? From a taxpayer's point of view, there's not a single redeeming quality to be found anywhere in this deal. From a resident of the historic district's point of view, this project is awful. It's going to cost taxpayers an arm and a leg while it overburns our traffic and crowds our schools and gives us nothing in return. The promise of windfall tax returns millions of dollars of extra tax money to spend at will. That is just a fairy tale. I suggest you return the developer's application for rezoning to him as having been found non-responsive and non-conforming. Ask that should he choose to reapply at a later date, he come completely prepared, including adequate proffers to pay for the damage this development will do to all our public facilities, and the assurance that he will build the work in strict accordance with our zoning rules without the use of any taxpayers' money to subsidize his profit. That's fair and that's reasonable. Thank you.
Ms. Torrey, thank you. Next speaker, we have Ms. Susie Gay.
Good evening. I'm Susie Gay. I live at 110 Goose Hill Way, and I've been a resident of Smithfield for 26 years. It's the longest I've lived anywhere in my life. I have 2 points to bring to the Planning Commission tonight, but first some history. Pierceville, dating to a land grant of 1637, was farmed by an ancient planter, that's a special term, Mr. Joseph Cobb, his family, and several slaves. Nearly 100 years later, Thomas Pierce purchased 300 acres of Cobb's land grant and constructed a temporary dwelling. Pierce's son, Thomas II, improved upon the colonial house and expanded the agricultural enterprise to a bustling trade along the Pagan River. If history is accurate, Captain Thomas Pierce II was subsequently captured at the Battle of Mackey's Mill during the Revolutionary War and imprisoned for several days by Benedict Arnold's British Army, who were reportedly encamped on the Pierceville property. Years later, Thomas Pierce II was one of Isle of Wight County's 2 delegates to Virginia's Constitutional Convention. So the 50-plus acres we're discussing this evening for an intensive development are of distinct historical importance. Back to my points. Number 1, taxes. I'm sure most of you are beginning to get over the shock of the county's increased real estate reassessment notices received in the mail. And if you haven't gotten it yet, sit down first before you open that envelope. It's quite an increase, which means our taxes will be going up again. Smithfield reassessments will also go up and raise our taxes even more since we pay both town and county taxes. So what do you think is going to happen when we, the town taxpayers, pay for the Grange development for the developer to make money? Our taxes will go up even more as our town staff figures out how to pay for the money we're giving to the developer. And this is over and above what we are already paying to keep Windsor Castle Park in order after having spent $3 million of our dollars, and to maintain the ball fields, in which we've also invested another $6 million, both looter projects. And let's consider the cost increases we will incur with all the developments, new buildings, houses, apartments, and townhouses. The taxes the occupants will pay to the town will not even begin to cover what the town has to pay out, especially since there are not going to be any new blue or white collar jobs created in this area. Point number 2, the look of the Grange development. Yes, there's red brick on the farmer's market and some of the other structures facing Main Street, just like the brick used at Smithfield Foods corporate headquarters and other looter projects. And it's beautiful brick. I like it. At least we think there's brick, since we really don't know any specifics yet on the Grange project. It's still formulating. The apartments, townhomes, etc. aren't made of brick. As a matter of fact, if what I hear is being built, again, no detailed specifics at all provided by the developer, they will look like giant stacked Lego blocks. Doesn't even begin to blend into the historic district. And 4 stories and a roof line on top of that? No way does that lend to the charm of our beautiful town. I drove to Suffolk last week for an appointment and was disappointed to see the build-up and the build-out along Route 10, around by OBC Hospital.
1 minute.
Box after box crammed into small areas with no character and not much parking. Lots of traffic, too. My husband and I were over in Newport News also last week, meeting our daughter and some of her law firm partners at a restaurant in Port Warwick. What a difference compared to Suffolk, North Suffolk, and the area around Whole Foods in Newport News. Port Warwick has all brick buildings, townhouses, apartments, single homes on tree-lined streets. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, and it's elegant. Why can't Mr. Luter and his backers build a development like Port Warwick? And I'll tell you why. The Grange's profit margin is made up and off of our backs, the citizens. Thank you.
Mrs. Gang, thank you. And my apologies to Councilman Mike Smith. I didn't see you earlier. Well, welcome to our Plan Commission. Is that Mr. Smith back there? No, it's not? Okay, hard to see from here. Looking through the crowd. The next speaker we have up tonight is Mr. Brian Lally. Lally.
An Irishman of note. Good evening, council members and planning commission members. My name is Brian Lally. I live at 226 South Church Street. I've lived here for about 30 years with my wife, Judy. We love the town.
Mr. Lally.
Thank you. I'm just going to do one thing first. I want to thank the citizens for your passion, your research, for the way you delivered your comments. Very well done. I didn't come as prepared as you did, but I thank you, and I'll just reiterate a few points that you've made, because they've made a lot of really good points tonight. I'm a licensed engineer, have been for over 40 years, doing a lot of building, a lot of planning. Planning is, plan is my favorite 4-letter word. And I see that there's a lot of things here that have not, I guess, been well researched enough in this particular plan that I'd like to mention. I'm really concerned about the density, and many people have spoken about the density of the housing. The waivers that are being considered for all setbacks, height, distances, and the like, it just seems it's just too much right now. I'm also concerned about traffic. I guess that could be my next 3 things to talk about is traffic, 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 because I see it that it's underestimated here. Just all the people have mentioned about going to Suffolk or driving over in Newport News. I mean, it's horrible traffic. I see traffic being a problem here, and I see it going back and a lot of it being trickled down South Church Street. My office sits on South Church Street. I'm right there on the road. And the noise is constant from all the traffic and the different sounds of trucks and the rumbling and school buses and everything else. And then there's the deliveries to places like this right here, deliveries from Amazon and from FedEx and the UPS and others. I know the trucks come down Jericho Road, which I'm on, the corner of South Church Street and Jericho Road. There must be 20 delivery trucks a day. It'll only add to it when we add to the density of this particular community that is being planned right here. More and more will add to that traffic study. I'm concerned about the speed and the traffic that would be on Carey Street. My son owns property just over the bypass on Carey Street. And the speed on that road, another gentleman, Mr. Dolinsky, mentioned the speed up there and being able to come out onto Carey Street. We go over and spend a lot of time over there. This town could probably generate the revenue needed to fund some of these things just by doing a speed trap on the other side of that bridge on Carey Street. It's 30 miles an hour. It's within the speed limits, the town's limits, but I'll bet you that it's 50 to 70 miles an hour when they come over that bridge. Just go out there and do a traffic study someday. You'll find it. The next thing I'll mention is taxes. I can't wait to have my envelope open. I'm scared to open my envelope, actually, based on what other people have said here tonight. And then I guess the last thing, and I'll get off the stage here, is this and these other developments that have been talked about by so many people who did their homework before coming tonight. I think it just damages the charm of the town. I think it's a development that doesn't need to be here. I think we could reduce some of the density. I like the idea of the farmer's market, but I don't like the idea of having to pay for that too. So just a lot of concerns. I appreciate all the previous speakers for all their, again, their homework and their research and their passion, because we have it too. We're not in favor of this particular development. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lowley, did I get it right?
Correct.
Okay, I try. Thank you, sir. The next speaker we have for tonight is a Mr. Eric Lehman.
Eric Lee, excuse me, the Smithfield allergies have got me, so.
Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
I apologize for the voice. Eric Lehman, 111 Thomas Street, Smithfield. I came here tonight with, one thing on my mind, because I'm old and I'm retired, and why I moved to Smithfield was quality of life. The small town, the less traffic, many of the things that people have talked about tonight. That said, I think that we need to acknowledge, and I agree with what Mr. Luter said, the Luter family and Smithfield Foods are important to this community. And I think the contributions that they've made need to be acknowledged, and as do our needs for the quality of life that we all experience here in Smithfield already. What I think needs to be done is what we look for in other areas of life, is I think we all need to look for a win-win. Those of us who drive by and look at where a little supermarket used to be and the farm out there and the rundown building, look now at an empty space that needs something. It needs improvement. It needs something that's going to speak to what Smithfield is and why many of us moved here. I don't think that in its entirety is what we need or what we want. I don't think we need 3 stories, and some of the things are there, but I think there are things there that we need. I think that if everybody looks at it in a way that creates a dialogue and a win-win instead of picking sides, we're all better off. I mean, I've lived 76 years in business for a very long time, and better to work together than to work against each other. And I think there are a lot of important things that people have talked about today, like traffic, and I live right on Thomas Street where Thomas and Grace and Mason come together, and I got to tell you, traffic there is already a nightmare. Now, I can just imagine when all the new people at Smithfield Foods are driving down their bicycles and their cars down to where they work. Things like that have to be considered. But I think that if we all work together and we consider each other's points, something can come out of that that would be good for everybody. And that's what I would encourage both Mr. Luter and his people, as well as those of us in town and you all. You know, let's figure something that really makes sense. Because I will agree, 4-story buildings and facades don't do it. A lot of the other stuff does. And anytime we're looking at changing all things with a lot of waivers, we need to think about that also. So we got a great town. We've got a lot of good people who've come up here and spoken. We've got good people like the Luter family and others who are committed to this town as well. Let's all see if we can bring it all together and create something that's going to work for all of us in a way that keeps the quality of life that this town is built around and doesn't lose it like our neighbor down the road has over there on Route 17. Let's try to keep what we all moved here for, and those of you who have lived here for all your lives, you know, the small town atmosphere. Thank you.
Mr. Lehman, thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Bill Harris.
Good evening, Bill Harris, 329 Gray Street. A lot to take in, right? We're hearing people speak from both sides, and one side's job is to argue and convince. The other side has to raise questions. I'm here to raise a few questions. One of the main arguments provided in support of the development is a promise from the developer that the town's tax revenue will go up about $455,000 a year per year for the next 10 years. The assumption here is that the revenue will be a windfall profit and become surplus monies available to the town. I'm not sure that that could be any further from the truth. All the tax revenue generated by the development at 10 Grange will be eaten up by K-12 education costs. We have to take a look at that, and we have to deal with it. The Luter consultant team suggests only 114 children will populate the 300 dwellings proposed for construction at 10 Grange. Both national and state data centers contradict that number. Statista.com says there was an average of 1.9 children under the age of 18 per family in the United States during the last 5 years, while Insider.com says that there are 1.7 to 1.8 children per household in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Based on national average projection tables, well over 500 children may reside in the Grange development. So let's take a look at the numbers. Isle of Wight County Schools spends approximately $12,500 per child per year. Even if we accept the number of 114 children living in the Grange rather than the over 550 students predicted by national average projection tables, the cost to taxpayers would be significant. Let's do the arithmetic. 114 students times $12,500 equals $1,425,000 in educational costs per year. It is beyond clear that even by using the numbers that are far below national projections, not only will there not be a surplus of money as a result of tax revenues generated from 10 Grange, there will be instead an increased tax responsibility on the citizens of the town in order to support educational costs. It is no secret that the state contribution to local school budgets decreases every year, and it will become increasingly necessary for localities to help make up the difference. The only way localities can generate revenue to help make up budgetary shortfalls in our public school system is through the raising of taxes. This increase on the financial burden on the citizens of the town of Smithfield will only be one of the many that comes to us as a result of approving 10 Grange as it is. Already, Town Council has committed up to $1.4 million to the construction of the farmers market within 10 Grange development. Borrowing that amount of money on behalf of the citizens of the town will obligate the citizens to pay off that note necessary to fund that commitment. The argument that the revenue generated by the new farmers market will pay off the annual interest of the note is ludicrous at best. Even if the note is secured under the most favorable interest and conditions, it is way past unlikely that the farmers market, which currently generates annual revenues of just under $40,000 a year, will ever generate revenues north of $150,000 a year, which would be the bare minimum necessary to pay down the annual interest on a $1.4 million note. Where will the town get the money to pay off the note if it is not through increased taxation? And even if everything else proposed for the development of 10 Grange were perfect and in line with our comprehensive plan and protected and enhanced the quality of life here in Smithfield and protected the historic district, which sadly is not the case, the cost to taxpayers this development will be crushing to individuals and to the town's economic future as well. One of the reasons to hold a public hearing is so that the members can be reminded of public input. Smithfield Time ran a series of survey questions asking the public what they thought about things. January 2022, what is your initial reaction to the development plan for the former Pierceville property? 70%, it is bad for Smithfield. February 2022, should Isle of Wight County and the town of Smithfield pay $1.35 million toward the construction of the farmers market? 74%, not a good use of tax dollars. February 2022, should the town of Smithfield create a new zoning designation to allow for large mixed-use projects such as the Grange at 10 Main? 63%, not needed. August 2022, should the town of Smithfield and Isle of Wight contribute monetarily to the construction? 51%. No, the farmers market should not be part of the Grange. What's your opinion of the latest plan proposed for the Grange? 56%. We don't like it. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, thank you. Next speaker we have signed up for tonight is Ms. Gigi Smith.
Good evening, Gigi Smith, 207 James Street. I agree with much that has been said. There's a couple of things, though, that might not be a popular opinion, but Mr. Luter has bought property. He wants to sell it. He's a businessman. What is the reason that he wants to do that? Is so that he can make money. That's what people in business do. So the idea of being angry that he wants to make money, I think, is unnecessary. My next point is on the special exceptions. There are a couple that I think that are valid. One is the front yard and the side yard setbacks. In the historic district, there are houses that are on the street, and there are houses that are 2 feet apart. So this is supposed to fit into the historic district. So those special exceptions, I think, could be considered. As far as the others, I think that more thought needs to be put into it on y'all's part before accepting it. The other thing that I want to point out, I used to be a member of the Planning Commission, and we would often tell ourselves, we're not in a hurry. We don't have to approve something tonight if we don't feel good about it. And I think that's important for y'all to remember. I do know that there is a deadline looming that isn't really all that far away, but there are reports that have been requested that haven't come in yet. Y'all don't need to be in a hurry to approve something. Doesn't mean you have to disapprove it. You can just table it. My opinion. Thank you.
Mrs. Smith, thank you. The next speaker we have up is Miss Mary Ellen Berbermeyer.
My name is Mary Ellen Biebermeyer.
Biebermeyer.
Sorry. 355 Grace Street. So I can, from my front porch, I can see the Pierceville property, 10 Grange. So I have like all these other speakers, have a vested interest in it, as you do as well, since you're a Smithfield resident. So I'm here to talk about that tonight, and I have several concerns. First of all, in this challenging economic climate, why is any taxpayer money being used to subsidize a commercial development? We have retired people in Smithfield that live on tight budgets, young families trying to save for their first home, single parents trying to raise their kids, professionals such as teachers, police officers, and firefighters who serve our community and teach our children, yet they're being forced to pay higher taxes to subsidize this one development. How is that fair to taxpayers? How is it fair to other developers? I think this sets us up for future problems. $1 million, a gift to the farmer's market, is not a gift when I, as a taxpayer from the town and the county, have to pay an extra $2.5 million in taxes. That's not a gift, that's a tax. That's a tax that's not a gift that keeps on giving, it's a tax that keeps on taxing. When, in the last year, when the Planning Commission worked for many, many, many hours, days, and weeks on the comprehensive plan, this new development makes a mockery of it. I know how hard you worked, I was at some of these meetings, and this developer is ignoring what the citizens want and all the hard work that you put into it, asking for special this, special that. I don't think that's right. We've been told that, well, first of all, this development is too dense. Too many apartment buildings, too many, the heights of the buildings, too high. Those are some of the examples that go against the comprehensive plan. We've been told that it isn't economically feasible to build multi-story apartment buildings unless they are 4 stories tall, thereby having to violate the current zoning rules. To that I say, too bad. While I certainly hope that every development in Smithfield is a successful one, it's not our job as taxpayers and as elected citizens to make sure a development is economically feasible. The developer, along with the local government and citizens, needs to decide that it either works or it doesn't work. The developer may have to make changes to their plan to abide by current zoning laws and citizen concerns, but we should not be giving preferential treatment to any one developer, especially one that is already asking for taxpayer money to be used. I'm concerned that there are a lot of questions regarding this development. We've brought up questions here. I know you all have questions as well. I think there's a lot of missing information. There needs to be open forums for citizens to ask questions and to receive answers. I know you're listening and I appreciate that, but we need to have back and forth question and answer between the town, the county, the developer, and citizens. Similar to last fall when we had a candidate forum, that was very helpful for citizens to decide on the town council positions. I think we need to do something like that here. I've said in the past before, I am not against development. I'm not against this development. I personally think we need a hotel. I love extra restaurants. That's great.
1 minute.
But this development is too dense. There are too many houses, and we are not being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. I ask you to do this right, and it's to slow this down. I'm not saying it doesn't have to happen. It has to go slow. This will affect Smithfield forever, and it has to be done correctly. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That is the last of speakers signed up for tonight's public hearing. The public comment portion of this hearing is closed. Planning. I'm sorry?
You need to give the
Would the applicant like to return?
Yes, I would.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to address some of the comments. Again, we listened. We had open forums well in advance of this to try to get feedback, to try to address concerns to the degree that we could. So we did have some of those events that were made available to the public. Listening to comments, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we are happy to meet with the citizens. We're happy to meet with you all should you have further discussions, but I will refer you all to the economic impact analysis, a fiscal analysis that was done. The belief that we are asking for significant subsidization for this project is not true. I have articulated what we will come back for, which is only for the piece that's of the public good. The private development, the private aspect of this development, we are not seeking any funds for. And the fiscal impact analysis clearly shows an economic benefit to the town and the county. Again, those numbers can be reviewed, those numbers can be debated, and we're available to have further discussions on those. Ms. Smith, I appreciate your comment about the variance on single-family homes. What we are asking with respect to single-family homes is no different than what's already in downtown. But it's a variance to the PMUD, and that's the reason that it's in there. But it is no different than what is already in historic downtown Smithfield with respect to the single-family homes. The apartments that we envision here are not run-of-the-mill apartments. And they have amenities that people at Smithfield Foods do want. We have elevators in the four-story buildings. We have interior corridors because of the safety concerns. We have gone to great lengths to put a facade on these buildings that is not your run-of-the-mill. That will cost more money to do. Again, I simply state that because it's fact. But we have taken into account the architectural style of what's in downtown and what we're presenting. And the quality of the houses and the quality of the multifamily, we believe, is very much in keeping with what's downtown. Comment was made about the restaurant being subsidized. We do not believe the restaurant is being subsidized as part of this project. As things get deeper into that, I think that's a misperception. But in closing, I simply want to reiterate that the fiscal impact analysis and what we're requesting is not going to be costing taxpayers money. With respect to the market, as the details unfold there, that is the one component that could cost taxpayers money. But I also think there's ways to recoup that money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lurie.
Mr. Chairman, you want to take a 5-minute break and then reconvene?
I was thinking that, but
We can do it after.
Yeah, I mean, you can let her finish, and then you can, maybe perhaps that's appropriate, then you get into your discussion phase.
yes.
Sorry, there were just a couple other things that were mentioned, and I wanted to make sure that they were noted, that they are in the package. Carol Tyree of Circa Cultural Resources out of Williamsburg did do a grave study, and it was submitted. That was along with Forest Environmental Services, and I wanted to make sure that you do have that in your packages. It's, I believe, also available online. The radar study was completed and did note that there were no graves found in the prominent locations that were pointed out, that the archaeological study that was completed by Thunderberg had mentioned that very specific areas needed to do the radar study. That radar study then followed the archaeological study. Both are in your package, both were submitted, and both are available, I believe, to the public. So I wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion in regard to that. The traffic impact analysis, as I mentioned earlier, has been put through quite a bit of scrutiny, both by VDOT and along with a sub-consultant that you all had hired, I assume, and does reach out fairly extensively, but VDOT is very specific on what those studies need to include. We don't get to make up the study area. They tell us specifically what that study area needs to be. And it includes the projected growth, both for developments that have been approved, as well as an incremental growth that they force us to add to those study numbers. We reviewed last month the utilities, both how we'll need to extend water throughout the site, how we can increase water pressure. That's in the package and has been reviewed by Smithfield. We talked about the extension of the gravity line to the pump station to improve service to the pump station, and how we would have to deal with those costs and make those improvements off-site. We also talked about the improvements of traffic around our property, and that would be required, again, with the project if it were to be approved through the rezoning. So I wanted to make sure that that was noted, that we did mention all those things last month. I didn't feel that it was necessary to reiterate that again, because, again, it's available and your time is precious. The last thing I wanted to mention or make mention of is the PMUD very specifically in the ordinance talks about asking for special exceptions, because the PMUD is specific to a site, or a mixed-use development is specific per site. So this is a downtown PMUD, and it's encouraged to include special exceptions. We're not asking for special exceptions because we want to do more, greater, bigger. We're asking for special exceptions because the PMUD ordinance specifically asks you to submit them, and it doesn't cover every single thing. So they give you kind of a baseline, and then if you read through the PMUD ordinance, it specifically asks that you submit special exceptions that can be allowed, and then there's things that you can't ask for. So that's what we did. We worked within the downtown ordinance as well as the PMUD requirements, and that's why you have those list of exceptions that include parking waivers or the ability to have shared parking, as well as the setbacks that were mentioned, to be in line with what downtown currently reflects on many other lots. That's it. Thank you. I hope that addresses several of the comments.
Ms. Venable, thank you. We've been here for a while, not quite finished, still have planning commission comments. But if we may, we'll take about a 10-minute break, give everyone a chance to refresh and relax.
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's a whole lot to comprehend, and man, you know what? We may need to have a work session. It's a whole lot to comprehend. Sir? No. We're not talking. We're talking maybe having a work session or something. It's just too much to comprehend. I don't know. You know, I'm like, this may be getting too far deep for me. But this, man. We got, you and I know. I got to make sure. It's good. I actually tried in this project is finished. Gardens because he's going off his street too. So we got to bring that in. That's just me. It's just a whole lot to comprehend. Whoa.
got the whole, so, here at North Carolina, oh, it works. Well, it's not that heavy. I can almost lift it, but it's like you can't get Carolina. I'll do it. I don't think I do right now. I do have an old truck.
Come back again later. There's all. Nobody's talked about. They said on the front end.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't hear that.
I guess it's that small, something. As long as it stops raining and it dries out that time, I get it. But do you believe
You do have the chairman who's right behind us. He was right behind us. Right next to us.
Good job, Charles.
What do you need in water? What do you need in water?
This is just tea. I do
What should be like that? This is a long time.
Damn fun. I don't watch this. Blake Shelton.
He's funny, but can have a toddy for the body. Okay. This is the longest one I've ever been to since I've been on board.
Oh, well, you missed one, because this is not the longest one. Yeah, this is not the longest one yet.
Okay.
I only got an hour.
That was trouble.
Next month.
Where's everybody at? Everybody back in here. Where's everybody at? Are we missing one? Oh, there he is. Mr. Kidd, Mr. O, Mr. Yoko, where is he at?
I think
He went to the restroom? Oh, there he is. Everybody ready? Ready? Opening up the meeting again. This is the Planning Commission comments portion of the hearing. And I know we have a lot to comment on. This is one of the most profound applications I think has been before this commission quite some time, if ever. It's a lot of information to digest. There's a lot of information to unpack. And a lot of well thought out comments by the public was given tonight. The applicant has expressed his concerns about this application. He's shown some willingness to listen and cooperate and make adjustments to his application. But we do have time. We do have time. But I would like a robust discussion from the commissioners tonight for transparency so that the public will have some idea of what we're understanding, what we're seeing, what we're thinking, and what we're concerned about. Okay? Planning Commission comments.
Mr. Chair, I'll start it off. I thank all of the citizens for your comments. But Ms. Gigi Smith and Mrs. Mary Beavermeyer comments resonated with me. You know, we're not in a rush. Let's take this slow so that we can get it right. The second thing is the impact on schools. The superintendent said budgetary impact, but he didn't quantify that with what's the impact. So that is some, and I am all for growth. You know, I think I'm raising millennials who I would love to have my grandkids near me. But unfortunately, I love Old Town Smithfield, but if we're going to continue to thrive and grow, then growth is part of that. And unfortunately, we're not always going to walk away happy. But at the end of the day, we want to do what's best for the citizens and the town.
Yes, it's not, Planning Commission's job is not to stop growth. It is to manage it and control it. Comments?
All night long, we've kind of heard parking spaces, how much parking spaces are allocated. I haven't heard how many handicap spots are allocated in all this parking. Who controls that?
88.
That would be part of the site plan review process to make sure that they complied with the zoning ordinance and the required handicap spaces.
Okay? Again, how many spaces are allocated?
Wouldn't that be decided by the ADA?
You got to have, if you put,
But you can't determine that. It'll be based on the size of each parking lot and where they're situated. There's standards that are in the town code that will dictate that, and that will be included if this is approved and a plan is submitted. But there will be as many handicap spaces included as are required by the code.
and I agree with you.
Okay,
I agree
but
150% with you.
Nobody can give you that number tonight.
Sir?
Nobody can give you that number tonight.
Why not? You're giving me the numbers tonight on how many are allocated per building and whatnot. For apartments, you're allocating how many spots they're going to have. How many are you going to allocate out of that 6? I'm just throwing a number out of that 6. How are you going to know what are you going to give to the handicap? Nothing. They're going to park at the other end to get.
You're missing the whole point. The code requires a certain number of handicap spaces in every parking lot based on the size so that will be determined at site plan. You're exactly right that it could be concerned about handicap parking, but that's something, that's a detail that will be worked out if this is approved at a later date. But be well assured that if the law requires a certain number, there will be that number.
Why shouldn't that been said and stated in this tonight?
It's premature at this point, Mr. Schwiger.
It can't be if you're giving me exactly how many spaces you're allocating for an apartment building tonight. You know the size, you know the space. Why can't you say, hey, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, whatever?
All the parking lots are different in size.
This parking lot's going to require a different amount of handicap parking versus in front of your buildings.
Okay.
That's all going to be different.
And that's assuming this is what's approved. This could still change.
All of
And
the
remember,
buildings-
you're talking to people at home, so speak loudly.
So all of the buildings have to be ADA compliant, correct?
Correct.
And so if they're ADA compliant, then they're going to have the ample amount of parking spaces that are required.
Okay?
Is my thought on it.
Dr. Pope?
I've got a general question for the team versus Ms. Clary versus, this is a general question, not necessarily pertaining to this application, but what is the trigger for building size, square footage, number of floors that an elevator must go in? I have a 2-story office building. I was told by the county I did need to put an elevator in because patients are not allowed on the 2nd floor, but at what point do I have to, at what point does a developer or a person have to put an elevator in? Is there a square foot trigger? Obviously, you have to have 2 stories to have an elevator, but is there a trigger that you have to put one in for 2 stories, 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories, and is there a square foot trigger?
I would believe that's an economic issue. What makes it
No.
feasible?
No.
What makes it, it's a
Just-
cost.
It's a general building code issue, but at what size building do you have to, you are forced to put in an elevator for ADA? Is it 3,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet with multi-floors? At what point does an elevator automatically get triggered? Do we know?
He has to answer, Mr. Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. I'm John Gibson with Venture Realty Group, and I'm one of Joe's associates and partners in the proposed project. You saw me last month, and pleasure to be here tonight, and we appreciate everybody's comments, and we certainly hear everybody's comments. To your question, we would need a specific architect to answer, but to my specific knowledge, we've built 4 stories without an elevator. So I don't think it's, so there's a code requirement, and each town has a different code requirement. So there's a Boca Road, there's varying building codes that you got to apply to. So when we get to the architectural programs, we could answer that a little bit better. However, there's also an economic and a function element. We are operators of about 1,000 units of apartments. And we have found that our 4-story concept, our 4-story product, is viewed more favorably by the public, by our homeowners or home renters, our community, because of safety and because of the elevators. So that is something that is certainly, I think, unique to a preponderance of suburban apartment projects which are built as 3-story walk-up. Think about having to drag all your groceries up 3 stories without an elevator. Think about having to drag your mattress on move-in and your furniture on move-in and all your furniture, fixtures, and equipment on move-in without an elevator. So we like to build what we call affordable luxury apartment units. And therefore, we like the 4-story concept in Smithfield because it's varied and it's different than what has been built in Isle of Wight in general. And we like to be different, and we will build a quality product because that's what we do. So I need an architect to answer you specifically, but I don't think there's a story requirement in it's going to be a number of units that dictate that, and the way developers are getting around not building elevators is they just build smaller buildings with fewer units. So once you get to X number of units, then you trip the elevator requirement. We're all about elevators because we think it's a great product and a great service. Sorry.
So my follow-up comment to that is I'm not a fan of the 4-story building in Smithfield.
Yes, sir. We understand.
And so for me, if you need real estate to make this economically feasible, I would rather see more 3-story buildings than four-story buildings, because I don't want to set the precedent of a four-story building in Smithfield, especially with other future developments that may be on the horizon in other locations around town. And y'all had made a comment that the four-story building needs an elevator. I was wondering where there's a trigger that's got to go in anyways, whether it's two-story, three-story, 10-story, but when does that have to trigger? But that was my argument is you're going to put an elevator in anyways. But I'm not a fan of four-story buildings, let me just put it that way. For me, personally, on this development, just Gestalt, I would rather see no four-story building, three-story buildings, capture your real estate, whatever square footage you need to make this work. How many units do you need? Get rid of the duplex homes, move these extra buildings, spread them out, move them into those locations, and create something more with retail in here, because getting rid of the retail business is going to get rid of some of the sales tax, lease money, some of the other economic advantages that are going into this, and we're not going to be capturing that money with decreased retail space and other things of that nature. So that's my gestalt on this. That's why I'm asking about the elevators, because y'all said that you have to put a four-story building to make the elevator worthwhile, but I'm not a fan of the four-story building. I don't want to set the precedent for Smithfield.
So the juxtaposition is, with more three-story buildings, you lose, we exceed your green area requirement, we think, by preliminary calculation of 40%. So I think that's a very stout number and a very positive number. And to the extent we sprawl additional buildings, that green area surplus is going away. That's not as good for the environment, in my opinion. But I respect your opinion.
But that's if you keep the same number of single-family homes. Something's got to give. And my question's going to give is, I'm not a fan of four-story buildings, whether you need that top floor or not, whether you keep the same number of single-family homes, y'all got to make that economic decision. But four-story homes, for me, is a very tough sell, because I'm very worried of what's going to happen with some other properties around town and what they're going to be doing with expansion somewhere down the line. And setting a precedent of four-story homes or four-story buildings is tough.
Yes, sir.
Another comment for me is this farmer's market is front and center. I still can't figure out why it's not where the hotel is. That's where you're going to see this. That's the draw. That's the charm. The hotel's a hotel. Why not tuck it in the back where the farmer's market is? I don't know. That, to me, I just feel like the farmer's market, to me, is misplaced personally in this, because I feel like it's going to serve better up front. Plus, you got more parking in that area to support that. So to me, the hotel and the farmer's market need to swap in this plan for me. Mr. Bob, one of the first gentlemen that spoke, I've been very concerned about spending $2.8 million on a farmer's market that's going to be paying for private entities. I have sent multiple emails, talked with multiple people. The way I understand it, Ms. Clary, correct me if I'm wrong, but that $2.8 million is not building the brew pub. It is not building the private space in the farmer's market, and it is not building the restaurant. It is only going towards the open farmer's market as the public spaces, if I am correct. That money, the brew pub, when it is sold, will be financed separately, and as well as the restaurant, and well as those retail spaces that are inside are supposed to be financed individually. Is that correct?
That is my understanding from the email that we received from Judy Winslow. There would be some sort of like a condominium type maintenance agreement amongst the parties, where they would be responsible for providing monthly maintenance fees.
So that money, in my knowledge, is not being used for private entities as thought and as stated, because I thought the same thing, and that got clarified for me. This may be too detailed, and we're not quite there yet, but when we get to the single-family homes on the small lots with all the setbacks, in the reading that we had this month, there was talking about 75% impervious coverage on the lot. That seems not right. Currently, in suburban residential communities, we're only allowed 20% coverage. How do we justify 75% impervious coverage on a lot? And if I buy a home, I say I buy one of these lots in here, I don't know, lot 76, and it's covered at 75%, I can't do improvements, I can't add. Where are we gonna cut that off? How do we do that? If suburban residential is a 20% impervious coverage, and we talked up to 75% in the literature, that's a lot of impervious coverage per lot. Where's our green space around that?
So when we do get the site plans, we are provided with the allowable impervious coverage for that lot. And it does vary across town, specifically comparing like Cypress Creek to Wellington Estates. And so they would then be allowed to meet whatever that threshold that was determined for the coverage of that lot.
I was under the assumption all suburban residential zoning would be the setbacks, front, side, rear, with an impervious coverage. So if, well, I'm just to pick on Wellington Estate, but if they have a 1/10 of an acre lot, and you have a 1 acre lot, you still only allow 20%. You know, I don't know, 75% seems like too much, and that would obviously, if we have to expand that impervious coverage, that decreases the density. That 75% seemed awfully high in the reading.
So, for example, Wellington, they're allowed approximately 4,000 square feet of impervious coverage on their lots. Vices the Cypress Creek, some phases are allowed up to 10,400. The newer in phase 6 would be closer to like the 4,000, and then 6,000 for, I believe, another section in phase 6. So those are predetermined amounts that we can only allow. Any additional impervious coverage that the applicant would like to partake on their lot beyond what Stormwater Division allows, then we send them to Isle of Wight County to purchase nutrient credits.
That's my understanding. These smaller lots, I believe that's what you're speaking of particularly. They're small lots, and he's asking for these smaller setbacks. And one of the speakers, so I recall, was Ms. Smith, and I was under the same impression. Those lots and the setbacks are reduced to replicate the downtown atmosphere. The homes are closer to the street. It's to promote pedestrian walking, and it's to maintain that downtown character in those smaller lots. And I would believe the runoff would be handled by stormwater, gutters, underground piping and such. That way, I believe, I'm not certain, Mr. Reed might be able to speak to this, but I believe that would accumulate in the ponds and the runoff and the BMPs. And I think those BMPs supposed to have an underground drain fall that goes somewhere to the creeks.
Well,
So the stormwater, in that regard, that has been addressed in spite of the impervious surface. That's the way I understood that.
So let me pose that as a question. Is the entire development considered for the entire coverage with the stormwater runoff and everything considered? And is that where the coverage for each of the individual lots is determined, not on each lot, but on the entire development?
I wouldn't say the entire development. You have different type of housings.
Well, you do, but is the entire development doing the runoff and the stormwater plan so that each one of the individual lots is considered in the entire development's stormwater plan?
Yes, you do have three BMPs here.
Yeah, the coefficients, the amount of impervious area, and I don't believe the PMED allows for 75% for the single-family lots. I didn't remember that off the top of my head, but that seems awfully high for a single-family residential lot. And I don't believe we have that much coverage as it relates to that. Nonetheless, what you're saying is correct, that all the impervious area has to be calculated, and our preliminary drainage studies show that those ponds that we're showing, as well as the underground storage facility that would be within the multifamily section, would handle all the runoff of the site. But I believe that 75% is high, and not part of what the PMUD requires, when we're not asking for any exceptions in regard to that.
So as part of this document, number 5, developing stormwater management plan infrastructure should be engineered in such a way that the case of single-family dwellings, each lot could be improved with as much as 75% impervious coverage without exceeding the storage capacity of development stormwater management structure.
I would have to pull up the regulations. Is that our document, or is that the town Smithfield's document?
It says town of Smithfield.
It's so hot, I can't imagine.
I think Mr. Yoko, Mr. Bryan had answered my question about it's all managed in the stormwater, because that's what this is saying here.
And the comment from Isle of Wight County, they do have to follow the Virginia runoff reduction method for their site submittal, so that will be reviewed by Isle of Wight County.
Okay. Then the other part that I didn't read in the VDOT, what about improvements to Route 10 bypass with the stacking left-hand turn lane coming from Smithfield going back towards the courthouse, where that traffic always backs all the way up? And somebody made a comment, if you've got all this traffic coming to this development and you're trying to even turn right, you're not even trying to go left of the courthouse, when would that left-hand turn lane need to have more stacking? When would that need to be? Where would, I mean, because this development's going to contribute more traffic coming down Route 10 bypass to get here. Would that not necessitate getting more left-hand turn stacking where it's already overrun right now? Do y'all know which intersection I'm speaking of at Main and Church, bypass? Do you understand? So when does VDOT comment on this development impacting that, and then therefore increasing the stacking on Route 10 bypass? I haven't seen that comment in VDOT's paperwork.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, was in the VDOT study that we don't have yet, or their final comments, I was looking for sort of the same thing, the impacts on the more away areas of Route 10. Didn't see anything in there yet, so I didn't know if there were, with those more comments coming, if there were comments coming from VDOT on that or not.
And I can reach out to VDOT for clarification. What was the intersection that you're looking for the left turn?
Route 10 bypass Main Street, heading west to the courthouse.
258.
Heading west on Route 10 bypass, the left turn movement where you turn onto Main Street going towards the courthouse. That's the
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. It's already stacked. And if we're going to add more traffic coming through that intersection, how far back does that left-hand turn lane need to come to accommodate all of those folks, plus the people coming to this development?
But this intersection, VDOT has a plan for this intersection separate from the development, is that correct? I thought there was already something in the works for that intersection.
So there are additional improvements, proposed improvements that are not being completed by the developer. If you look at your general development plan, and VDOT did point those out.
Good, because I was going to ask that question too, so I can ask that one now. I noticed these drawings say a lot of those improvements are done by others, so I guess that's what I was trying to figure out is, haven't been on the board long, what are those others, and what are the other changes that were coming to that intersection? And who are the others?
And I can find out clarification from that.
Yes, there's quite a few changes made to that intersection, or proposed for that intersection. And I do believe VDOT is still working on that, working on what their final summary will be. One of the gentlemen, I was concerned, I thought about this while going through the paper, the agenda. It's a lot of information in the agenda. It's a lot to unpack there. But listening to the applicant and one of the incentives for this development, he mentions that the development is to serve quite, mostly Smithfield Foods employees, to bring them to town. And my concern was the entrances and exits out of the development, and if employees are going to be leaving that development, and let's say they use the James Street intersection with Cary, or they use the Grace Street. Well, is James Street going around the YMCA?
Yeah,
Yes.
but I don't
That's
think it intersects with Cary.
It crosses Cary, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What is that street across? I'm sorry?
You're talking
No.
talking about Grace Street.
No, Grace Street. Grace Street is one of the intersections I'm talking about. Grace and Cary.
Okay.
But also, when you exit the parking lot, YMCA, that's considered an entrance. An entrance is supposed to be built there from the development to cross into that. That's James Street or Washington Street, where the YMCA is. Okay? That's considered one of the travel routes out of the development. And I'm thinking if these are Smithfield employees going to work and coming home from work, they're using that exit. They're also using the Grace Street exit to go toward North Church Street, toward Smithfield Food Headquarters and to the plant. And I don't know, I haven't had time to really dig into this, but I don't know if VDOT has any comment about that intersection of Thomas and Church Street, North Church Street. That's not a very efficient intersection as it is. And increasing this traffic, I'm wondering if, as been suggested, that we have always stops at some of these intersections, that may be one of the intersections that should be considered as well in VDOT's comments. And VDOT, their traffic impact analysis.
When are we expecting their analysis?
They have 45 days to
45
provide
days.
comments.
Okay.
One of my other concerns, you're talking about parking. The hotel parking. It does seem to be at a premium. But I was curious, if you have hotel parking, and this scenario, I mean, oftentimes you have a hotel. What happens if you have a number of buses, or if you have a number of truck drivers, semi-trucks, wanting to park there and use that hotel overnight? What happens with that? Any comments on that? They're prohibited. Okay. And buses? I'm sorry?
Buses are not prohibited.
Okay. But if you have a number of buses, coming to that parking lot, that might be some,
But in that case, Mr. Chairman, you've got 60 people on one vehicle instead of multiply 3 vehicles. So it's probably an efficiency instead of a burden.
based on occupancy. Based on occupancy? Okay. Okay, I'm just thinking about how all that fits. But there's a lot of concern, there's also concern about the impact of the schools. And I don't know, there have been conflicting views on the number of students that this development is going to produce. From what I've seen so far, the schools are going to be impacted negatively because I can't remember if, I believe it's the high schools that will be over capacity.
It's the middle schools.
It's the middle schools?
Yes.
I think they're waiting on a letter from Ms. Briggs, is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Generally, in the past, Mr. Chairman, the school board, they have a formula for determining impact based on data that's provided. And they usually provide that information saying what, based on the proposed development, the projected impact on the schools would be. And the law says that if they, Always building a lot of schools right now, and so there's going to be more capacity. And nationwide, there's a decline in overall school-age children. So they have all that data, and they're supposed to provide that, and hopefully you would have that by your next meeting.
Okay.
This is from the superintendent of school. The current classes and personnel at the high school should be sufficient to accommodate the added general education students. But I guess the problem I have is that anticipated budgetary impact, but didn't give a, the severity of how it would be impacted.
Pretty vague.
The numbers, increased student numbers is a question.
In that same comment letter, they did indicate that because of the additional 66 elementary students, they would require at least 2 general education teachers. And then they also mentioned that potentially a dedicated bus and driver would be required, and continue that an additional special education teacher and instructional assistant would be required for Hardy Elementary, and it would also need a shared position between Smithfield High School and Smithfield Middle School for the added special needs.
Didn't it also require a special needs bus as well?
Correct.
And that's correct, as Mr. Gibbs stated, that the middle schools will be over capacity? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think the data I'm still waiting on for schools is the total county impact to schools. We
Yes.
haven't gotten those numbers as of yet.
That's true.
That's what we really need to know. With 15 developments out there with varying sizes, what is the how many school children have we added to the county by all those developments? That's the number we need from every development that's been approved thus far. And that's the number I can't seem to get my hands on.
I agree, and that's the information that we cannot get.
I think we're going to get it. We've asked the question enough times. I'm just being told it's slow coming.
And that
Well,
goes back to what,
There's a lot of stuff that we're still waiting on, from the schools, from VDOT and stuff like that. And I don't see how we can make any kind of decision until we have that information in hand.
goes back to what Ms. Gigi Smith said, go slow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's prepared to make a decision tonight. I mean, we've heard a lot of good comments about everyone's concerns. I have mixed emotions about what's going to happen with this property. I think something's going to happen on this corner, and I would like for it to be the best example of what this town has to offer, because it is an entrance corridor. We want people to see what's the best about this town. I want them to see the farmer's market. I would love to have a boutique hotel in town. I don't know that I want 4-story apartment buildings either, Dr. Pope. I'm with you on that. maybe we don't always have to give up all the open space to get, less density. That's a trade-off, and I don't run those numbers. But I think there's a different way to finagle this, and come to the table and make it a better plan than what we have here. I think if we had to make a decision on this right now tonight, I think that decision would be no.
I think we owe it to the applicant to discuss the individual components of this plan, to tell him what we feel about this plan, so he can decide, is this legitimate or not legitimate? And is he gonna pursue this further? Because that's what he's asking us. He has to make the decision, is this economically feasible for him to do? And for me, there's a lot of moving parts, and we need to isolate the parts individually, discuss them, let him get our feedback on that, and then see where we stand on these individual components. But one last comment I'll make on that is, I may be wrong in this statement, but I don't think we're going to get a developer that cares more about this town and is going to give us a quality development. The developer that came in 8 years ago that we didn't like the density of what he offered, that was 1% of the quality of this development. And I'm really afraid that another developer is not going to care and is just going to slap something in here. And I personally do not want to make this developer upset that he walks away from this table. I think we need to have good negotiations about what it is we like, what we don't like, what he can live with, what he can't live with, and what he can manipulate to make sure he is making money the way that he intends to make it while the town still gets what we need. And I think we owe it to him to discuss the individual components of this tonight, so he has some understanding of where we are, and we can get the feedback from the public on what we're saying, what they're hearing from us, to be able to carry this forward, because we only have to July 20th to make a decision, because we're under that guideline to make a decision by that date unless something gets postponed or pushed further down the line. And if we table this tonight without a discussion, then we're just losing time.
No, I agree with you, Dr. Pope. I think this is our best chance to get the best quality product for this parcel, and I think that's hugely important. I don't disagree with you there at all.
One thing that's been done in the past, and I don't know if y'all want to consider this or not, but in years past and other developments, and maybe long before many of you were here, the Planning Commission has done work sessions where the format is much different. You sit in this arena and the developer sits right here, and you do exactly what you suggested, Dr. Pope, and you go about, you say, let's talk about this and let's talk about that, and you get into that kind of a dialogue.
Are we not there right now?
Well, I mean, you can do that now, but it's one of those things that maybe, if you want to do it now, that's fine, except that it's really,
Less formal?
it's less formal when you do it in a work session environment. I mean, that's up to you. If you want to do it all tonight, that's fine.
I was ready to discuss it last month.
Because it was a discussion item.
That's right. So, no, I'll do whatever y'all want to do, but I think we need to talk about the hotel, the retail space, farmer's market, the apartments, the single-family homes. I think all those individual components need to be discussed of where we stand on those.
So, Mr. Chair, can we move for a date?
Well, there's some follow-ups. I mean, is there more discussion before we set a date? More discussion. Is there more discussion? And
Well, I mean, like some changes that we saw tonight, like they eliminated some of the retail space to improve the vista to the farmer's market, when you could make the argument that more retail space is going to increase the foot traffic to everybody and the farmer's market. Dr. Pope doesn't like the location of the farmer's market. I think it was designed to be the centerpiece of the development, and that's why the location was chosen. So, I mean, there's several things to debate about each aspect of the plan. And I don't know if we're prepared to do all that tonight or not, but if you want to pick something, take a stab at it, I'm game.
no. One of the points I would repeat, someone's mentioned it, one of the speakers mentioned it. It might have been Mr. Lehman, I believe. That is an empty lot in one of our major corridors. It doesn't say anything about the town of Smithfield at the moment.
I've said that for months. It's been a
Considering
parking lot.
Mr. Luter and his father's record and what they've done for this town, I do believe it is the town's best chance to get something there that most of us, if not all of us, would appreciate.
Well,
I think this is the best opportunity.
I think that's also what Dr. Pope said. I mean, there are issues involved, and I agree with most of what you're saying, Dr. Pope, but we really don't want the developer to take a walk because we're just going to out and out say we're not going to go with this. I agree. I think we all have to sit down with the developer and discuss each item individually. There's just so much that my mind is ready to explode. I mean, it's just unbelievable how many facets are involved here.
Then we go back to what G.G. Smith said, take our time.
I agree.
I agree.
And we can take our time, but the ultimate deadline is July 20th.
July, yeah.
Well, it is, unless the developer gives you additional time. But the clock is ticking. My point about you made a point, I'm not picking on you, Dr. Pope, but we use you as an example. You said you didn't like where the hotel was, and you think they should be split, okay, or swapped. Well, if you had a work session, then you've made your point. That, for example, the developer can tell you, this is why we have done it, these are the reasons why we have done it, and why you're suggesting we do it a different way doesn't work. And you may buy that or you may not, but at least there's that opportunity, and I would suggest that knowing what you've just said and suggested, if you give them a little time, they can come back with whomever they need to bring and justify what they've done and why they're doing it and why it's important. And then you can make a decision, is this okay or is this not okay? And can we live this or can we not live with this?
Well, I think that's 100% necessary to do.
I mean, and that's why I would suggest that a work session environment is a better forum to do that. The public's invited to a work session. It's not like you're doing, nobody's doing anything behind closed doors. It's just in a different environment and a different format.
But I think we need the retail space back that they eliminated, because that's where our tax revenue, business license fees, all the other things, we're not gonna get that off a single-family home. At least I don't think we are, unless my math is not correct, but, we definitely need to sacrifice single-family homes, bring retail space back, because that's that's the economic engine that's driving this.
Right, and that was gonna be the question, I know you threw out the financial numbers today, but were those based on the changes with the decreased retail and the changes, or was that from what was submitted before?
Mr. Luter, if you come up, please. You may come up.
And I'll defer to these folks, but I think my numbers are right. So our revised retail is 5,000 square feet, 5,200? And the original plan was 15,000.
Right.
So we eliminated 9,800 square feet of retail. Again, and we did look at and could consider an alternative to what we presented tonight that would not eliminate quite as much. The other thing that I personally have been thinking about is the 5 cottages that we have on this plan. Certainly 1 or 2 or even 3 of those could be converted into retail. Now, they could serve as a really cool restaurant, as an example, to the degree that there's flexibility in the plan. I mean, we are submitting a plan, but as everybody knows, it's only the rezoning, and then you get into the nuts and bolts of actually presenting the plan and getting it approved, and you have the ability, at least I think you have the ability to maneuver a little bit away from that. And our goal was to create a product that meets the demand of the consumers, the citizens and the consumers in this town. And that's, that it's in our best interest. We welcome the opportunity to, while I wanted to speak, we welcome the opportunity for a work session. We think we have collaborated with a number of people from the beginning of this project, and we welcome the collaboration. Again, we think we've listened to people, we've made changes. Certainly, there's certain things we can do, and there's certain things that we can't do. But we welcome a work session if that's what you all want to do. And again, open to the public is fine. I mean, I don't know what the protocol is with respect to, feedback. I would like to think that, we can have collaboration with you all and you can get the necessary feedback from the public. But I want it to be a very focused discussion between us, and I would ask that everybody come prepared with their concerns and what they can and can't live with. Because again, there's certain things we can and can't live with. And if we can meet, if we can find something that works for everybody, we hope that we can, and we want to move forward. But if we can't, then, my father's fully prepared to let this land sit, and and he'll let somebody else buy it. Again, just the fact of the matter is, he is 84 years old. He ran a business, and he got to make a lot of decisions, and he made quick decisions, and he was successful because he made quick decisions. This process is 2 years long now. And I can't tell you how frustrated he is with how long it's taking. So that's just a fact.
There are a lot of issues the community wants you to address with this project.
And I understand. And I have to remind him that we've got some other developments elsewhere, and we're facing similar timelines and processes. So it's a process, but it's just very different than anything he's used to. But that's for me to manage. I simply share that with you all because he is 84. Yes, yeah, why don't you point that out?
So exactly where the arrow is right now, and again, thinking about parking, there were 2 medical office buildings there, and some of the reason we had the 2-story retail up front is to be able to have some professional offices. So for 2 reasons. One, medical office has a higher demand on parking. We modified one of those buildings to be a professional office building, which has much less demand on parking, it has a lesser or smaller parking ratio, and we were able to convert one of those buildings to 2-story. So we didn't lose, in total, we didn't lose 9,800 square feet of commercial. We were able to replace a good amount of that commercial with office space that sits in the same location where we earlier had a medical office building. So we didn't lose all that retail, and I should have pointed that out earlier, and I apologize for that, but we were able to make up 6,000 square feet of the 9,800 he just mentioned in that space there.
And that was done, we made that change from just medical to office because we have a local tenant who might go into that space. And it would allow that local tenant who's pretty big to bring more people back to Smithfield.
I would like to point out to Mr. Luter that 84 is not that old. I will be there in October, so tell your dad to hang in there.
How's your patience?
Maybe this is part of our maps in our packet, but can it be highlighted so that we know in the future what would potentially be public, turned over to public, and what would remain private? Because when you look at this, it's hard for me to picture what parking lots might be public, what might stay private in that, so I understand what the town's scope is and what their expenses are going to be and what they have to care for, what they have to maintain, all those issues. It's, we kind of say the farmer's market and the green thing, but what are we really responsible for? What's really going to be public out of this? And some of these like diagrams, like stuff like this, you can highlight what's public, what's private. That would be helpful for me to be able to visualize what's going to be public space versus private for me personally. I don't need it tonight, I just think it in the future.
Now, for the sake of transparency, I will say this. If anyone has seen the agenda for this month's meeting, there was a lot to unpack. It's 980-some pages of information.
985.
985. that we received, was it Thursday night, Friday night, to prepare for this meeting. It's an awful lot. It's an awful lot to take in. And I think it's an awful lot to expect a decision to be made on this tonight. As been said before, we do have until July 20th, or July 10th?
20th.
The 20th. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
With that also being said, I've asked Ms. Clary at the beginning of the meeting before we adjourned, but before we got going, but I asked her, is there any way to delineate what information has changed, but what has remained the same? Because it's, you know, I've read through 985 pages, but I want to know, I don't want to read 985 pages again. I want to know, I want to read what's changed, what's gone on, and reference back and read what I need to. So I don't know if there's a way to help delineate what's new information, what's been changed, what's been updated, whether it's by VDOT, the schools, whatever it may be, the county, whatever y'all offer new. But I don't know if that's separate, just to stick it in its own packet and then figure out how to cross-reference it back to that. I don't know a way to organize that, but if y'all have any ideas, I'd love to have a separate packet of changes, because I'm going to carry around the same original packet the whole time.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, based on our discussion, I would move that we ask staff to schedule a work session for us.
Second.
Second.
A request for a work session and a second. I won't call for the vote, or just by a tally of yay and no. All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Opposed? Hearing none. I would declare you will schedule us a work session. The public will be informed, of course.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. As far as the public hearing, this application tonight, it is my understanding the Plan Commission wishes to table this.
You need a motion, if you're not gonna take action, you need a motion to defer action to your next planning commission meeting. And you can do that again, but you have to at least continue, it's not a continuance, it's a deferral until your next regularly scheduled planning commission, which would be June.
I think it's 16th, if I recall.
It's the
June
13th.
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 Mr. Chairman, move to defer action until the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting.
Second.
We have a motion to defer action on this public hearing, this application, until the next scheduled Planning Commission meeting. We have a second. No further discussion on that? Call for the vote. To defer.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Swecker?
Yes.
Mr. Yoko?
Yes.
Dr. Pope?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hillegas?
Yes.
And Chairman Bryan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to table until the next meeting has been approved. With that, do we have the minutes? Is that one?
Because of the length of the meeting, we,
Okay. Well, this meeting is adjourned.